Well,
Meet Dave of Delusions of Grandeur, actor, producer, and director of films like Tales of the Forgotten. He has come to assemble a team of freaks, geeks, and even worse, film nerds, to discuss films ranging from mainstream to downright crazy. There is Tammy, car enthusiast, and Dave's fiance, Dustin, reptile expert and overall horror collector, Jake, environmentalist and fine art film critic, and finally Brandon, a therapist with a love of film that can only be seen as insanity. Together under Dave's leadership, they are Inside Movies Galore. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the show.
to heal.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, and today we are continuing the birthday month of both Brandon and myself. And this time it's my turn, and hopefully you guys survive the elements of the film to make it to this show.
Captain Trips didn't take me down, so
Good. Glad to hear it.
yes.
So we definitely made our stand and survived. But hello everybody. My name is David Streggy, and we are going to be going on about Stephen King's 1994 miniseries, The Stand, which spanned 4 episodes at the time. And it stars quite a few mainstream actors and whatnot. Some TVs, some already known. I mean, Garris, Molly Ringwald, Jamie Sheridan, Laura San Giacomo, Ruby Dee, who played Mother Abigail in here, Oasis Davis, Miguel Ferrer, Corin Namick, Matt Frewer, the great Matt Frewer, who also played Wayne Selinsky's neighbor, Adam Stork, who played Larry Underwood, Ray Wellston, my favorite Martian, Rob Lowe on one of his earlier TV roles, Pierre Van Norden, Bridget Ryan, Kelly Overbay, Bill Fagerbach, Rick Viles, Chuck Adamson, and quite a few others. Rick Viles. I know he's deceased now, but in any case, let's see what IMDb says about the miniseries before we go into first impressions here. So, after a deadly plague kills most of the world's population, the remaining survivors split into 2 groups, one led by a benevolent elder and the other by a malevolent being, to face each other in a final battle between good and evil. So, some of us have seen this in its entirety before. Maybe some of us haven't. I don't know. So let's go around the room and see who has seen this before or hasn't. I guess ladies first. Tammy, was this a first-time watch?
Oh no, I've seen this over the years more than once. You definitely got to put some time aside. But Um, yeah, I enjoyed it from the first time. Like I said, I think the first time I watched it, I didn't really realize it was going to take as much time as it did, but um, it kept you. I can remember the first time I watched it, not knowing it was going to be this long. I still was. It kept me interested to continue watching it. You know, even though it was so long, it wasn't like, oh man, really, Um, but and I'm a big Stephen King fan, anyway, so I definitely really got into it. I don't know if I read the book first and then saw it, or saw it the first time and then read the book, but I know I read the book. Um, but yeah, it's Stephen King. He gets you involved. Before you know it, the time is just going by. And it's like, wow, is that late already? But
Well,
it's like you don't want, just like if you're reading it, you don't want to stop watching it. Just like if you're reading it, you don't want to put the book down. It's just he keeps you intrigued, keeps you going. It's definitely a good read besides a good watch, I think.
well,
So
before I get into anyone else's opinion, this was directed by Mick Garris, which Garris kind of became like Stephen King's gunman as far as directors go for helming some of the adaptations of um his book to miniseries productions. So, and I also think that this one was the best one that was put together. But heading forward to you, Jake, was this a first time watch for you?
No, it was not. I was kind of slow coming to the stand. Like, I was kind of slow coming to Stephen King. I read The Shining in 10th grade and I loved it, but I didn't read anything else, I think, until The Gunslinger. Maybe Carrie. I can't remember which one started my run through King. And I did finish The Dark Tower before I read The Stand. I kind of wish maybe one day I'll read that series now that I've read so many of the books, because it's, I think, the fourth book that The Stand factors into. Um, and I freaking love the book. It is my favorite Stephen King book. It is one of my favorite books I've read. I am almost certain that I saw the miniseries finally a couple years after I read the book, maybe a little bit later than that. And it is a time suck. And so this is only my second time watching it. It's too long for me to do it as a regular thing. And there are issues. Now, at this point, it's probably been 7 or 8 or 9 years or a little longer since I read the book. So it's a little hazy in my memory. But I do remember very distinctly that I strongly feel it may be miscasting or it may be bad acting. I don't know. But Molly Ringwald's performance as Fran Goldsmith sticks out like a sore thumb for me in this series. I do not care for it. I don't think that she is what I envisioned as the character, and I don't think she does a good job. And most of the acting is... I think that's another reason I don't love the miniseries, is it feels cheesy as hell. I know it was a TV miniseries in the early 90s, and relative to some of the other Stephen King miniseries, it's not that far off. But it doesn't really have the edge that the book does. It's a little cheesier. It feels a little preachier at times. But but that said, Stephen King, I know, did adapt the book himself to the teleplay. And it is a good example of someone adapting their own work to another medium and mostly getting it. I think in terms of taking that enormous behemoth of a book and cutting it up into 4 hour-and-a-half chunks, he did a pretty good job. And I'm not going to deny that. It's still enjoyable. And some elements of it are really good. I also feel that Jamie Sheridan is not how I envision Randall Flagg. I think someone closer to Christian Bale when I think Randall Flagg. So for me, Jamie Sheridan, I think I appreciated him more this time. I feel like he absolutely fits what they're clearly going for. But he's not my vision of Flagg, and that is an important thing, I think, for this. And that's one of the things, anytime you have an adaptation of the book, you're going to, if you've read the book first, you've got your, your ideas. Some of them were perfect. I love Gary Sinise as Stu. I think he's great as Stu. And Rob Lowe's Nick Andros, I love some of the cameos. I put up a picture of Stephen King. He's got a small role in the series, and it just amuses me so much. You got a great cameo in the first episode by Kathy Bates. You've got a nice extended cameo by Ed Harris. You had some pretty interesting people showing up at various points. And it's supposedly Jeff Goldblum's in it, but I wasn't able to figure out exactly when that. I missed that somehow.
Yeah, I missed somehow where he was or where he showed up. Maybe it was in the congregation somewhere.
I don't remember him either.
It's a voice acting role, from if I remember correctly. And he's uncredited. Him and Bates and Harris were all uncredited.
Maybe he's the flu commercial guy. Maybe he's the voiceover for the flu commercial.
That would actually be kind of hilarious to me. Yeah, he's listed as radio announcer. So maybe he's the guy that announced Larry Underwood's song at the beginning. I mean, if that's the case, that is a brief cameo. But yeah, it would make sense. And that's another thing. Like, I feel like Larry Underwood's development is a little haphazard. I think the guy does a good job. Who is Underwood? Adam Stork does a good job with the character, but he is such an ass when you first meet him, and I honestly don't remember if he was that big of an ass in the book.
He was sleazy, to say sleazy and cheesy, to say the at least, when he first came into the picture.
I mean, they all had to go through character development, and that was one of the pointed ones. Actually, one of the most pointed ones in the book.
Right. My point being that I feel like his character development, even though the actor did a good job, I feel like that was one area where maybe the direction or the script kind of didn't really match it. I also thought they went in a little overboard on what a creep Harold was. But what three last ones? I'll Ray Walston is Glenn, Matt Frewer is Trash, and Miguel Ferrer is Lloyd. They were all spot on. I loved all of them. Ossie Davis is always great in everything he's in. So there was some really good. There's some great stuff here, and I'm glad I got to see it again. I'll probably watch this every now and then. I do still need to see the remake and find out why people don't like it. That's an even bigger time suck, I think, from what I understand. Because that's 6 episodes, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but overall, There's a lot more here to like than your last pick, Dave. So I'll give you that.
Okay.
You can go on ahead. I've got. I'll be back. I can follow right after you on this one.
Yeah.
Alrighty. And me, I'm pretty sure that I watched this when it first came out on television, because this was a 3 to 4 day event.
Yeah.
That happened on TNT or Bravo or USA Network.
No, this came out before most of those were a thing. This was, wasn't it CBS, I think?
Yeah, CBS had it.
No, ABC. No, I'm looking at the poster here. It was ABC.
Okay, ABC.
Yeah.
So the same network that put out Dark Shadows.
Right.
But in any case, I watched it then, and then later, I just so happened to evidently somebody had taped all 4 episodes to recorded tapes, and were selling them at a rummage sale that I went to. So I had those for the longest time. And then when I met Tammy, one of her first birthday presents to me, or Christmas presents to me, was that 3 mini series thing, because they had just put those to disc like that together.
The one that you said when I put it up, you said you had that one.
Yep, I have that one with the Langoliers and the Golden Years. Yeah.
I still have not seen those 2. I need to see those.
The Langoliers, it's definitely aged some, but the Golden Years, it's kind of a slow thing, and I believe it was the second thing that starred the E.T. actress.
The Langoliers just need to have touch up at the end.
Yeah,
really bad digital effects at the end kind of threw it a bit.
Yeah, I honestly think they should actually see if they can actually remake the Langoliers.
They're probably looking at it. They're always thinking about remaking them.
Well,
but anyways,
they've remade or revisited a lot of the King stuff recently, so it could.
I love the theme in this, especially since we had a pandemic of our own.
Yeah,
not too long ago, which a lot of people were referencing The Stand and also referencing the movie Contagion at the time.
Yeah,
but one thing I have always loved about this is it begins on my birthday. It begins on June 17th.
Very appropriate then.
Which was just recently past my birthday. But
you were on June 17th. You were unleashed upon the world just like Captain Trips.
I guess you could say that. I guess you could say that. And the funny thing about the name Captain Tricks is, if I remember correctly, even one of George Romero's movies, not Night of the Living Dead, but there was another one that he did, and I swear to God that there was something called Tricks in there.
Captain Trips.
Well, not Captain Tricks, but at least something.
Saying Tricks?
Yeah.
That was Trips.
Well, that's what the book said anyway.
Yeah.
Trip.
Yep. Yeah. But in any case, I enjoy this. It's got themes. I know Stephen King wasn't a very religious man, so
but stuff changed over time.
Yep. I know. I
think one of the reasons I like this is that it kind of explores the importance of faith without really coming down too hard. like there's good versus evil, but it doesn't really put a name on ultimately, other than Flag being one of many names he gives evil. Because
Well,
many
and
of
the thing that you have to understand about Stephen King, and I think those of us who do know King's work and whatnot, is that a lot of characters that he's written about are referenced in almost every other book, book or short story that he's ever had.
Oh yeah.
They call it the Stephen King multiverse, kind of, sort of, but and Randall Flagg, he shows up. The name shows up. I swear to God, I do believe that it does in the Eyes of the Dragon. And there he's like a Merlin type character,
Yeah, it's in
Yeah.
that one.
He is an Eyes of the Dragon.
That was that
and
directly
they
tied into the
yeah.
Dark Tower.
Well, and I believe that he has always been considered like a man in black, and that is like the character that the gunslinger follows in the Dark Tower series. So
Yeah. One of the things that we used to hear about it, and he let this slip in an interview once. It's like, well, always look for characters with the initials RF in my stories. You never know which character Flag might be hiding behind. There are some people who say he's in certain books like Insomnia and a few others that he doesn't appear outright at, but there could be mention of these characters. So it's kind of fun in that. And technically The Stand is one of the ones that came from.
But in any case, I enjoy it for what it is, and I'm always in it for the long haul. Whenever I watch it, I believe there's only one other miniseries that has anything to do with Stephen King that I think is just as good, which is Rose Red.
But that's one of the century.
Which we've covered here on our channel, I believe. So
Rose Red is gotta be like my favorite.
Well, this one is mine, but let's see what Brandon has to say about this particular mini series. Was this a first time watch for you?
No, I admit I only got through the first episode this time around, but it's just so long, and I had a lot going on this past week, and my wife wanted to watch it with me. So, yeah, but it's okay because I've watched this probably about 6 or 7 times, so I know it pretty well. As far as the first time I saw it, I don't remember. I know that I was introduced to The Stand when I was in high school. There was a friend of ours that was a huge Stephen King fan, and he introduced us to the Dark Tower series, and he got me to struggle through the first 2 books. So get through the first 2 books. That third one, however, will blow your mind. And he was right. That third one did. I mean, the first one was a tough read. It had some moments, but it was a tough read. Second one was a tough read for different reasons, but had some amazing characters. And then the third one was just, I still say that's the best book in the entire.
Yeah, the third one was off the walls.
Wasteland was just an amazing book. Now, the first time I actually got a reference to The Stand was in the 4th book, which, by the way, that was the last one that had come out for the time because there was this huge pause between the 4th book and the 5th book. And Eddie, Susanna, and Roland, and Jake, and Oy, can't forget Oy, were actually had to go through the world that The Stand took place in. Right. And in that book. And that got me even more interested. And the friend that I had that liked Stephen King had said that it was his favorite book of all time. So he lent me his copy, which was an old copy. It was like one of the, not a first print, but like I think a second print, but still in the original edit. So I got to read it in the original edit. Then I bought the big boy, which had like the big re-edit of it. Then I read it again. And then I read it again in, I think, the mid-2000s. And just recently, I've been going through all the audiobooks. My goal is to get through all of the Stephen King books connected to the Dark Tower. There are a lot of them. Not all of them, but there are a lot of them. And then to go through the Dark Tower again. Because there's actually going to be new content related to it, because there's a new Talisman book coming out, which is going to be cool. But I was really kind of excited when I heard about the series. It had already aired since, of course, when I finally got to it. And then I watched it, and I was both enjoying it and disappointed with it at the same time. I actually really enjoyed... God, who is this? This is why I have the thing up here. I really actually enjoyed Jamie Sheridan's portrayal of Flag, because but that was also one of the reasons why I really thought that the portrayal of Flag in the Dark Tower movie by what's the name, Jacob?
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey would be so good. It's just because the character he was able to show a very charming face, but you could see anger under the surface, which is what Flag is he's really just this anger and evil incarnate.
I thought McConaughey was one of the best things in the Dark Tower movie, and you're right.
It's just I can't. It's hard for me when I know that it's bad. I don't want to see it, and it's sort of like the other version of The Stand. It's not because I hear it's bad, but I didn't watch it originally because it happened during the time where the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial thing was going on. So it was one of those, much like a Ghostbusters 2016 situation, that if you watched it and liked it, then obviously you were evil. And if you watched it and hated it, you were also evil, just by a different group of people. So I was like, I need to put some time away from this political mess before I watch it and say what I think. Much like Ghostbusters. But unlike Ghostbusters, this one is much longer, so I have less interest in going back to it. But I thought that the acting was good. The only one that I had a huge problem with, and I agree with Jacob that Molly Ringwald kind of phoned it in a little bit, but in a way it made the character look a little nicer than the character in the book was, because the character in the book also had some growing to do, because she was not a nice person when you started. She was kind of a free spirit, but she didn't care that much about letting her opinions fly when they were kind of hurtful.
Correct, and she was even meaner in the book, from what I remember, to Harold.
And I did not like Corin Nemec's version of Harold.
Yeah, I
still don't really care for him that much, but that's because they didn't give him any character development.
Yeah. He seems so overly geeky.
Well, that's the point.
Overly geeky is a good way to put it, yeah.
But, I mean, if they characterized him as they had in the book, he would have been very overweight and even geekier than he was.
But I agree somewhat with the Molly Ringwald thing. I was used to seeing her in the 80s type movies, you know.
Right.
And then seeing her in this, it didn't really seem to fit her. You know?
But yeah, that's the thing, is I did read the book before I watched this for the first time, and that did kind of mess with it, but I still enjoyed it. To this day, I will only associate the Blue Oyster Cult with this freaking series.
Here too. Every time I hear Don't Fear the Reaper, I think The Stand.
That was a great way to kick it off, showing all the dead bodies and playing Don't Fear the Reaper.
I looked at that and I said to myself, that's perfect. I thought it was great, and now forevermore. Stephen King has done this to me many times. He has played music in the background that I now forever associate with his horror films.
He is well known for his musical ear. I think he has like a it's either a page in a magazine or a radio program or something, or both, where he talks about his musical picks. And I've looked at some of his picks. He has some very interesting choices.
I mean, I'll never be able to listen to, I think it's the Carpenters again in the same way after 1408. We've just begun. I mean,
yeah.
But
that was another good movie.
Yeah.
So, but any case, as far as the movie goes, I did enjoy it. There are a lot of interesting things in the book, which it'll be on my mind as we discuss. So it'll probably come up well in the book, but we'll get to it when we get to it. And though otherwise, still my favorite adaptation that I've seen of this.
Okay, so let's get into the plot because it does begin in Texas. I'm trying to remember where it starts in Texas, but I know where it ends up in Texas. I know it ends up in Arnett, but the facility itself.
Isn't the facility in California or something?
It was in California.
Yeah.
Was it?
It's like they made it across a couple of states before they.
Must have been in Northern California because they said he stopped in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
I mean,
They could have gotten lost.
Got very lost.
Okay.
But,
so there is a factory worker who works as a gate attendant in this secret facility that seems to be in a gated community, and there is an outbreak of a bug that just is not contained, and they tell him to close the gates to not let it out and stay where he is. But this bastard, he decides that he's going to grab his wife and kids and fly cross country and escape the whole situation. And I don't understand how closing those metal gates would have kept the virus inside.
Well,
to begin with,
the people inside,
right? It would have slowed the transmission to new people.
Yeah.
Would stop it? Probably not.
If Champion had not escaped,
yeah,
they could have locked it down in time.
Maybe.
And that was the idea behind it, is that Flag had a little bit of a hand in that gate malfunction.
Yeah.
Right.
Because once you have a plague like that and it's surrounded by nothing, and they knew immediately when something was going on, so they would have had that thing surrounded beforehand.
Right.
But whether it would have been 100% is hard to say, but I think it would have been, done.
Well, and so Campion does escape, and he shows up in Arnett, Texas, at a gas station that is owned by a guy named Hap, and his several mechanics that seem to work in his garage, or at least are friends of a sort. I believe they all work together. The four.
Arnett's one of those towns where, big factory town where the factory no longer works, and now people are kind of just living hand to mouth.
Right.
And they're just kind of hanging out there.
Yep. And so, and Campion's car ends up running straight into the gas pumps. And Sinise's character, he's like, Hap, turn off your pumps! And I think they were able to turn them off in time before it exploded. But
he was able to do it. He's
yeah. And they all end up going over to the guy, and they look inside the window at his wife, and they're like, "Ew," and he's just gasping his last breath, and one of them goes and calls the ambulance. Another, I believe Sinise is actually the one holding him. And he's basically all concerned about his wife and child, and he's very lucid about what he says, and he says something about the man, the dark man is coming, or something to that effect.
Seeing visions of him chasing him. Mm-hmm.
So I believe he's the impending doom character, to tell them that something bad is happening. Something
the harbinger.
Yeah, the harbinger.
Dude, then you have to tell him something's bad. He brought the bad with him.
Right.
Well, yeah.
He Jason Voorhees and the harbinger all at once.
Meanwhile, it then goes to Ed Harris's character, where he's like this military guy in command, and he's been told that this guy, flew the coop, and he's swearing up and down a storm about the guy, because they didn't know where he was, and then one of his lieutenants comes in, and he's like, "Oh, we found him. He evidently ended up in Arnett, Texas. How the hell did he get go all the way across the country?"
Yeah. So now they were kidding themselves about containing it at that point.
Yeah.
So our chance of containing this stopped the second he stopped at a drive-through place.
Yeah.
So in come the military to Arnett, and the first thing that happens is this no-name sheriff shows up and asks questions. But as he's going away, he's talking to one of his deputies, and he's noticing all this the military vehicles passing him, and he's asking his deputy about it, and she's asking him, "Have you been anywhere near Arnett?" And he's like, "No, sir." So he's also pretty stupid about being. So he's bringing the virus forward.
I think it does a lot there. You got to keep in mind, a person's first thoughts are usually survival. Well, as far as Campion was, he had hoped that he was able to escape in time before the virus or whatever they had down there got him. And he probably only knew a little bit about it anyway, because he might not have even been clear to figure out why. You just knew there was bad crap down there. As far as the sheriff's deputy, well, that's more of that's a whole lot of none of my business.
Right.
And so, it's a kind of way to show how stuff like that spreads. In the book, oh, by the way, there's going to be a lot of spoilers for this film and the book in here, just as a heads up. In the book, they do an amazing job of talking about how the virus spreads from this to that, and to show that there was really no chance of containing it after it got out.
Right. In the miniseries, there are a few direct through lines, but like one that when we were watching it, we were like, "So how did Fran's father get sick?" And I'm like, I'm pretty sure there was a through line in the book that directly explained that, but that's left out of the miniseries. It's just kind of, I guess, understood in this version that this was some nasty shit and there was no escaping it.
One thing that I feel was a sad part that they kind of left out, and they could have done this, but I understand you got to cut time wherever you can.
Right.
Is one of the things, like the one of the general that was there.
Yeah.
Part of the thing that they show, of course, they do show him drugging and drinking up the whole time, which, yes, that happened in the book too. He was high off his ass the whole time, which I can't blame him for that, because he was basically supervising the end of the world.
Right.
But one of the things that he always obsesses over is he's got that internal closed circuit feed going where you've got all the dead scientists, and one of the scientists died and fell straight with his face in the soup.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very end of that part where he goes in to die, he plugs in the codes, goes down to the lab where they're all at, doesn't bother with anything because he's going to off himself. Why should he bother to do protection? And before he does it, he basically pulls the dude's head out of the suit.
Yeah.
So I don't know why. Sometimes it's those little touches that really make things come alive, you know?
Right.
Very true. Very true.
Right.
And of course, you can't get everything on screen from a book. And I
And
mean,
it's one of the reasons why I said earlier it's rare that you have someone successfully adapt their own work for another medium. It does happen. William Goldman with The Princess Bride was a phenomenal example. I've actually still not read Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl, but I've seen the movie and it's excellent, and she adapted her own work. So there are times where it happens, and King did it here, but for one thing, if it's your own work, you're really close to it, and it's probably much harder to say, oh, that's not important. If you're adapting someone else's work, you're like, oh, well, that can go. You know? So it's good. It's hard to know what, you know. So I give King props for being able to, because the book's 1,200 pages long or close to it.
Yeah, it's
a big book.
It's a monster.
The original was much shorter, but they have an unabridged version that's out now. That's like,
well, yeah, that's because initially King got so mad at the publisher for cutting out like 400 or 500 words.
Yeah. Right.
Well, he also changed a couple of things. If you look at subsequent publishings of the book, the original stand takes place in 1980. Then the next time they reprint it, it takes place in 85.
Oh.
The current iteration of the stand takes place in 1990. Matter of fact, he actually sticks in a piece where Larry talks about watching Nightmare on Elm Street for the first time, thinking about, well, this Freddy Krueger guy, I wonder if he's going to take off. So it's kind of interesting how it goes. So really, if you think about it, this one doesn't take place all that far from the most recent iteration of the book.
Well, and I think the reason why you would see different things added over time to each revisation is because he was trying to keep the novel current as much as possible for the next generation. So
yeah, that would be tricky to go too far into that, because with a book with this much detail, you can only change so much.
He did stop in 1990.
Yeah. And some of the small changes, like I'll go ahead and mention one of my favorite changes from the book in the movie, miniseries, whatever. It's just a little thing, and it's a throwaway thing, but I love it. And that's where Flag meets Lloyd Henreid. And he's like, good to meet you, Lloyd. Hope you guessed my name. And Lloyd just looks at him like, huh? He's like, oh, a little classical reference. Oh, never mind.
I love that.
And he's just referencing sympathy for the devil, which is very appropriate for Flag.
That actually just, when we just watched it again, that actually stuck out to me too. I remember that. And I was like...
But we have various character. A lot of this is character development of some of the main characters. So, I think what happens next is you do have. Okay, I like how Elf's family father shows up as a guy who is part of the people shipping them off in buses and whatnot from Arnett, Texas to What was it? Virginia?
No, it's Vermont.
Vermont.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where the CDC is over there. There's like one in Atlanta and one up in Vermont. Of course, I learned about the one in Atlanta because of Walking Dead, but you know.
I don't think they called it the CDC in this though. Didn't they change it slightly?
I have no idea what they called it in this, but I know it was the CDC in the book.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, they get shipped off. Stu and all his neighbors and friends get shipped off to Vermont. Yeah.
Correct. While that is happening, I do believe that's where we are introduced to Rob Lowe's character, which he plays Nick Andros.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick is a deaf and dumb mute. And so I believe he's being made fun of by a group of small town.
Well, more than that, he's being harassed and
Yeah.
actually physically assaulted by them.
Correct.
Yeah.
He is basically being abused by the local bad boy, which just so happens to be related to the sheriff's sheriff himself of whatever county that he ends up in, because after he gets beat up, he wakes up in a jail cell, and they learn quickly that he's actually able to write whatever. So it's not that he's stupid. Well, he can actually write intelligently.
The town doctor apparently nearly ran him over and took him to the jail because he's friends with the sheriff.
I gotta say that Nick is one of those I feel is done the most dirty by both the book and by the movie, but even dirtier by the movie because they don't go into him as much. Yeah. At least in the book, they give him a lot more of a background, how he became deaf, why he didn't learn sign language, and how he actually went to the struggle of learning to read lips, learning how to write. They went through a lot with him to give him a background, even gave him a mentor and all that. And this, it's sort of, like I say, I feel like he's thrown away very quickly. In this,
it is. I had forgotten because it's been a while. I'd forgotten what his fate is, and when it came around, I was like, "Oh, well, I wasn't expecting that so soon." But to your point, one of the things that I love about Stephen King's books is that he really does create well-rounded characters. He really does a great job of getting you to know the characters. And the miniseries does a pretty good job. I'm pretty sure there's a few characters that got introductions in the book that don't really get them in the miniseries. They're just kind of thrown into the action as things go along.
I do like that they introduced Ratman in this. They don't really do as much with him as they did in the book, but I did find him hilarious.
Very brief intro, yeah. But you get good solid intro in this segment. You get Nick's intro. You get a good intro to Fran, to Larry, to Lloyd, to a couple of the others. So you get like little intros. But it's nowhere near the depth for individual characters or the characters overall as you get in the book. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. And Brandon, you were talking earlier about how the disease spreads. I think one of the fun things in the book was that sort of they're both happening at once. You're seeing how the disease is spreading while you're meeting all these disparate characters.
Yeah.
And it was really handled well, and they did an okay job with this. But in this format, it just wouldn't have been as easy to, Yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's a lot that they have to do. It's
Yeah.
kind of fun to look at the weeds as they go, and like I say, I agree with one of my friends that other than Eyes of the Dragon, this is probably one of my favorite King books, which is unfortunate for Dave and his discussion because that means I'm nitpicking more. But I also am I got very in depth about Dark Tower lore, about different things. I actually have something else I want to talk about towards the end about the whole God and Jesus thing in this. But yeah, because I mean, for the longest time for us Dark Tower fans, we were sitting there with 4 books and we didn't know what the heck was going to happen or whether he was going to even bother ending it or not. He was kind of like, maybe one day, I don't know. But and that kind of scared us into it. So we kept thinking about we had so many theories and we were looking at different books and different things, trying to figure out what was it, what kind of meaning are in these stories. Does this mean certain levels of the tower and so on? It was kind of a cool thing. So I'm a big lore person with King.
Okay. So, yeah. So it does go into Nick's story a little bit there, but then it kind of goes back to a bit of Sinise and his character Stu, while he's being tested in the facility in Vermont. Meanwhile, most of his neighbors are dying around him. He just doesn't know that entirely. And I know they stick a hamster in his room just to test his air, and they're not understanding why he hasn't contracted the disease yet. So they're trying to poke and prod him and whatnot, and he's just not having any of it. Meanwhile, I think this is about when they start to introduce Fran and her father, and
Harold.
Harold. Harold is kind of this friend that kind of grew up around her. It always was in love with her, just never knew how to tell her that he loved her or anything like that, and he was just awkward, even as an actor, awkward. So I feel like his awkwardness was offsetting how awkward he was supposed to be.
I feel like they did him dirty with this movie more character wise. Yeah, Harold is a dick. Don't get it wrong. The character is a dick. He's an asshole and he was a bad guy. But a lot of his motivations were kind of just thrown away with just like, he's a nerd. Well, we all hate nerds, right? So yeah. Okay.
Right.
End of motivation. And the nerd's like, well, nerd's upset because he can't get any. But the way that Harold's motivations went a lot deeper, like Harold's sister was one of Fran's best friends, and she picked on Harold horribly, and Harold was bullied relentlessly by his father, by everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel like they did Fran a disservice as a character by not including the mother, which you've read the book, Jacob. You know what I'm talking about.
It's been a minute.
But you know what I'm saying. The mother was a character that was very much included.
If I remember.
They include her a little bit in the father kind of reminiscing about her, but that was about it. Yeah.
Because she definitely shaped how Fran interacted with things because, well,
yeah,
life sucked a lot more because of her mother.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, her mother was kind of a biatch. A high society biatch. But It's vague in my mind what because she was in the book a lot more than they showed. They killed her off in this one, so
They also, if I'm remembering correctly, and again, this is very vague, but you guys can help me if I'm wrong. I feel like Fran was aware of her pregnancy and struggling with it almost from the get-go. And in this version, there's almost no mention until she finally admits it to Stu. Like, there's almost no mention or awareness that she's even thinking about it.
There's
to the father at the very beginning, and that's about it.
Right.
The father says something about Jeff to her.
About her boyfriend, yes.
Yeah.
Talks about the boyfriend, and she says that they're not together anymore.
Right.
And that's when I started thinking, okay, something is a little bit off there. It sounds like she had a very good relationship with the guy, but then suddenly cut it off.
Right. I mean, there is that. It's like I said, it's just, I think it's one of several problems around the way the character's done, but I just think it was something that I seem to remember it being more a part of the story earlier on in the book than it was here.
Well, they did a full-on thing in the book where she's confronting Jesse with the news, doesn't like his answer of, well, we'll just get married then.
Yeah.
And basically, she had a certain, but the way that they have a lot of these characters, the part of the stand that's also good is that the characters show a ton of emotional growth.
Right.
And Fran was sort of like that free spirit, wanting to, and romantic at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that just ended up kind of screwing her over in a lot of ways as it went on.
Right.
It's just like Harold. Harold used to be the character I identified with a lot when I read it when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that there are a lot of us that will admit, we'll have identified with Harold a lot more than we'd like to admit when we were younger. Because, I mean, I know I was relentlessly bullied as a child, and I understood perfectly his motivations in the book because he's looking at these people as you would as a high school kid who's relentlessly bullied. Stu's on the football team. It's the jocks versus, this and that,
Well,
that.
And also in here, Stu right out and tells him when they meet up with Fran after he escapes from the Vermont system, basically tells him, I'm not in to screw with your girl.
No.
And yet ends up screwing with her anyways.
Now, I do side more with Fran and Stu now than I did back then. I understand it a bit more, but I understand, but I did identify with them back in those days. I mean, when you're that person that nobody likes and they all there, I mean, and Harold was shit on throughout the entirety of the book.
Harold is another one that, if I'm remembering correctly, he had a little more nuance to his development in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part, and again, you guys can give me your idea. I feel like, if I'm remembering correctly, his thing with Nadine was rather, it could have been handled better, and I feel like it was handled better in the book.
It's still disturbing in the book.
Yeah. No, I'm not necessarily meaning that it's not disturbing. I'm just meaning like it just felt almost kind of like this needs to happen to move almost as a plot device.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like it felt that way in the book, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, the idea is that there's choices, and both in Harold and Nadine's cases, they had a choice.
Right.
And they ended up choosing, the wrong side in this case.
You chose poorly.
Indiana Jones reference.
And Nadine is another one where I really feel like they changed the character quite a bit from the book.
Which one?
Nadine.
Oh yeah, that was another one where I like Laura San Giacomo. I generally like her as an actress, and I feel like plus she is an attractive woman. I feel like she probably could have been a great Nadine, but something was off. Like it almost feels like she didn't know what she needed to be doing in that role.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what Nadine is. She doesn't know where she needs to be. She's torn. But I just feel like there was something off about that performance too.
Y'all will have to update me a little bit on how her character is handled some, because I didn't get quite to that. Not about her character, but about Joe.
She ends up okay. In order for me to get into that character, I need to.
We'll get to it when we get to it.
We're still in
we're still coming up to the a point where Stu. Okay, Nick ends up. Nick is the first one who dreams about Mother Abigail.
Right.
You can hear.
Now, before you get to that, this is split into 4 parts, and the first part is the plague. The second part is the dreams.
Yeah, but Nick has his first dream in the first.
Right. I was just going to say, wasn't it kind of near the end where we started seeing dreams?
Sort of, kind of, but Stu had not escaped the control plant.
Right.
They do the first dream at the introduction.
Stu has one and Nick has one. Yeah,
they introduced the first dream fairly early on, because as soon as they introduce Nick, when he gets knocked out, he has the dream immediately.
Okay, yeah.
Correct.
Right.
And he can speak and talk and that's when you first get the introduction to Mother Abigail, and she is 106, and she could still bake her own bread.
I still bake my own biscuits, as she said. And the actress Ruby Dee did an amazing job as Mother Abigail.
She did. She was a little over the top with the corniness.
It's King.
Yeah.
The character was over the top with the corn.
Now, funny thing though, apparently she and Ossie Davis are actually married, but they're playing characters that are like 50 years apart.
And the thing is, you have to realize first, before you go into any King element, is that his portrayal of many different people is corny.
Yeah, sometimes.
And King loves the magical in trait, as they call it. I mean, you got to look at a lot of his movies. Green Mile, he loves that trait. Shawshank. It's just that whole idea of the person of color having the power to help the white people succeed. Not as an evil thing necessarily. I'm not saying that he's doing it like that. It's just it's funny that he loves that trait.
Yeah, it is something that a lot of people will do. They kind of look at people from another background and assign sort of a mysticism or a, and he does seem to do that a lot.
and she is one character where I'm fine with them not giving her as much background as in the book. They went. Yeah. They talk about her childhood, her experience with racism, and where she comes from, and how she will always vote Republican, which I guess was the big thing then for somebody her age. So it was just it was weird. That was a bit much, I thought.
I'm kind of glad that they didn't bring some of her political acclamations into the whole thing. Kind of glad that they kind of kept her neutral to everyone involved. That she's just this spiritual person that they see in their dreams that is guiding them to better pastures.
Sometimes I think there's too much going in the background.
She's not really neutral. She's actually very welcoming and warm to most people. When Nadine tries to cross her threshold, she senses Flag and tries to banish her. But mostly she's very welcoming.
But because at the end of next dream, she's like, come see me, Nick, and bring all your friends.
Yeah, right.
Now Stu also dreams of her, even while he's in the control thing. But the difference between his dream and Nick's dream is that he's still in that darkness. I mean, he's still touching some of that darkness. So she's trying to get him to escape and come and see her. Right. But unfortunately, he's kind of like in that halfway place where Randall Flagg's character could very much influence him.
Well, I mean, they all have that choice to make. Some of them are more inclined to go one way or the other. Like Nadine, one of the issues that she had later on is that you find out she's never dreamed of Mother Abigail. But most of the characters had dreamed about both. Very few of them dreamed about only one, and it was the idea of them actually, like I say, it's that biblical idea of choice.
Well, part of the thing when Nadine would come to find later that Flag had chosen her to be his bride. And so she was, in a sense, I guess you could say she had the mark of the beast, I guess.
Well, she knew about it way long before the plague.
And as she was ambivalent because she was given real world choices that actually appealed to her. Other people, they had all these mystical choices or whatever, but it was like there were a few people who had like real world. Harold was another one. Like he had regular real world choices to make that really had a big impact on where he ended up.
Both of them if circumstances had been different, could have ended up on the other side.
Right.
Very true.
And one thing, I think Harold got short-shrifted in the miniseries. I seem to remember in the book, his penitence was more fully fleshed out and it felt more satisfying, I think.
Well, the book sat with him as he died slowly.
Exactly. It was very brief in the show. Yeah.
He eventually did repent at the end, yes.
So we very briefly talked about Fran and her father, but another character that I do think we have to somewhat mention is Larry Underwood.
Right.
Larry is a sleazy, and he's very full of himself.
Right.
Kind of character, and he's coming off of having a record deal with I guess a very important record, and unfortunately we find out that he actually owes money. He spent the money too fast.
Well, he's I think Brandon, you used the term free spirit to talk about Fran. That absolutely applies to Larry. He is a free spirit.
You see, I mean, one of the things that they show me, as you said, like one of the things that they did, actually, one of the things that's funny is that if you listen to the lyrics of the song, they include a lot of stuff that was in the book that they didn't include in the book, like him doing a one-night stand with a woman and leaving, and the woman throwing a frying pan at his head. It's like, you're not it's like you ain't no nice guy, which sticks with him throughout the book. It's sort of like how doctors sleep, where the thing that sticks with Dan throughout the book series is where he keeps seeing the baby from the one night stand. I guess there's something about one night stands and King and drunken one night, but where the baby's reaching for the cocaine and saying candy over and over again. That whole "you ain't no nice guy" is over and over again in the book.
Right. And his own mother almost shuts the door in his face, and he comes in all wheedling and charming and all that stuff, and
Come on.
and then when she gets sick, you see that he actually does have a decent guy under that exterior, and that's when you start seeing things start to turn around. But at first, yeah, honestly, the way he's portrayed in those first couple of scenes, he almost comes off not as an up-and-coming rock star, but like a rock star's agent.
He's very was it that arrogant worm song, Big Fat Road Manager?
Right.
Fat Road. I mean, Larry's funny because the party was the way that he got in debt was apparently he had thrown this giant party to celebrate his big hit because he's going to be rich.
Yeah.
And at the party, he just has these people handing out cocaine like candy, as they say, and just says, "Yeah, just keep doing it." And then realized that he had racked up this huge bill. It was only like $2,000 in the book, but 1980s cash to 1990s cash is and he could not afford it, so he had to hide out until it took off, so he could. Which they did discuss in the book because it does get to that point, but it's a bit too late then.
Yep, it's like it already the plague had already started to kill off like many of the people while it was rising the charts of the billing or whatnot.
Well, it started in California, so I guess it makes sense that it would be.
Well, he had that call to his girlfriend where she told him, "Oh yeah, it's climbing the charts, and he's like, "Oh, babe, I'll be out in a couple of days." And she's like, "Actually, stay put. Things are really weird here." It's like
military and stuff going around.
Yeah.
One thing that I feel like it was a shame that they left out in this thing was the mother basically telling him, but then again, they left out a lot of character development for Larry in this anyway. So, but because I think you made that point, Jacob, earlier, they kind of screwed his character development.
Yeah.
But that he was, what was it? It's like, Larry, you've always been a nice guy, but you've always thought about yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm getting it wrong, but whatever.
I think they tried to say it, or she tried to say it, except it came out more like you're more like your father.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which is what she does ultimately say.
My first impression of Larry was that he was totally full of himself.
Right.
He was on this big ego trip. I got the hot rod car. I got the,
Right.
playing my music.
And it didn't.
I look decent. Look at me.
And didn't his car had a vanity plate, and I think didn't it say like "Dig Yo Man"? Wasn't that?
I did like that they did the full song. They just never for the soundtrack at least, which was kind of
right.
And I do have to talk about another harbinger that you see throughout the film. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Right.
Was a monster shouter.
He did much better in that than in the book.
Yeah, he did a much better job. And let's see. He said words like "Bring out your dead, bring out your dead."
Here's one.
They did kind of have Flag kill him with like an aneurysm or something.
Right.
He gets off way better because in the book, a bunch of people lynch him because he's not sick when everybody else is dying of sickness. It's just basically an illustration. Is like the plague isn't the only thing killing people here.
Yeah.
Which is sad, but I guess the imagery of seeing a black man getting lynched is kind of disturbing for a TV thing.
I guess so.
Could be.
Well, and I'm not sure if the world was ready to see a lynching like that on TV. So, might as well have Randall Flagg do it, just because his messaging about his coming was pissing him off. But Larry actually noticed the guy while he was coming into town, and then later when he was heading out on the road, he saw the guy there, and I think it was when he was with Nadine, and he was like, I remember seeing that guy.
I think it was just after they met, wasn't it? Or shortly
Yeah.
after they met?
Yeah.
I can't help but think of the whole like Monty Python, bring out your
Yeah,
dad.
I could not help but think of that.
I do have to harken back to the words that you see at the beginning of the mini series, and it's also a quotation that you see in the beginning of the book. Is this is the way the world will end? This is the way the world will end. This is the way the world will end, not with a bang, but a clatter, or something to that effect.
Oh, King loves his quotes.
Oh yeah, he loved his quotes, and I think that went with it. It's just something that's stuck in my mind. That quotation, I forget exactly where it was from, but
Wasn't that Elliot?
Yeah, I believe it was T.S. Eliot.
He loves T.S. Eliot. I mean, that's where he got the freaking Dark Tower right there.
Well, no, he got the Dark Tower from the Robert Browning poem
Right.
to Childa Roll in
But
the
also
Dark
The
Tower.
Wasteland by T.S. Eliot.
Yeah.
Right. But I think, Dave, I think I'd read as well that Roland was inspired by that particular line.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but in any case, let's see what else. So it gets down to the last scientist in the Vermont Control Center for Disease Control or whatnot, and this guy is an asshole compared to the other guy. He fucks with him earlier, because he was like coughing, and he was like, "Hey guys, it's okay. I was just joking." Why would you joke about something like that? Well, you don't understand what it's like from this side of the fence. You know, that type of thing. So I wanted you to get a taste of what it feels like. But ultimately he tries to test him one last time or whatnot, or tries to take him out to shoot him because he's just had enough of him.
Actually, what's funny is that the thing I recognized the first scientist the most from was Alf, because he was the dad.
That's what he was from. Yeah, I thought he looked familiar.
I was like, the dad on Alf, he was evil all along.
Yeah. Yes.
And it takes place late enough that you could say that this was his job, working for the Center of Disease Control. He was a part of the military cover-up while Alf was at the house the whole time.
I could see that.
Alf was the real patient zero.
Yeah.
Right.
He was the real Stu Redman.
Yeah, Stu I felt like was close. I thought that the actor portrayal was actually pretty good, but I feel like the character in the book was a little bit more charismatic and likable. less I mean, I understand the anger, because the anger is supposed to be there. It's justified.
What did you people do?
But I admit the other one was a little bit calmer, and it took a lot to anger him. That was the point through it, is that he was very slow to anger. He was always thinking first, and he never thought of himself as a leader, which of course the best leaders are like that, right?
Right.
Him and Larry. I mean, Larry's biggest journey, the thing about Larry, which made him interesting, was that he had that journey from being a selfish person to being a selfless leader, and which led him to the end. I mean, Stu was a leader from the beginning, but one that was a reluctant leader. He didn't want to lead. He was perfectly fine with just tagging along with Harold and Franny, just like safety numbers.
That was one of the points I was trying to make with that scene at the gas station or whatever the shop was. Like Stu, one was perceptive enough to see there was oncoming danger and that we need to act, but he wasn't barking orders because he thought of himself as, he was barking orders because he's like, oh shit, we're in trouble. And he's like, I'm going to get something done because it needs to be done. That was kind of his thing.
Well,
yeah.
And I think we have to harken back a bit to Nick's storyline a little bit. He meets up with a, I would have to say, a gentle giant,
right?
Because I almost feel like this is Stephen King's Of Mice and Men reference.
This is another King trope that is maybe something that doesn't work for everyone. Actually, John Coffey fits this trope too.
every like, what was that thing like in what was it, not Team America, the other one, like that the guy played a person like
you talking about Tropic Thunder?
Tropic Thunder, yeah.
Where they kept telling him, you never go full.
You never go full.
I don't know why, but I seem to remember the same actor playing in some college sitcom type thing, like Saved by the Bell or something like that, for some reason.
The IMDb pick, I guess he plays Patrick on SpongeBob. He's done a few things over the years, but
well,
MOON, that spells SpongeBob.
MOON, that spells moon. But
I will say one thing that I love, and I feel like maybe this was in the book. I feel like it was in the book. No, actually, I'll hold off until we get to it because it's really fun.
Before we got to him, we do have like the whole military cover up.
Oh yes,
I know that Kim had asked about that, and I thought to myself, well, they were clear in the books as to why. It was still a shit decision. Basically, the first part of it was we need to stop having a panic. But then when they realized that everything was screwed, the next question is, why bother covering it up? And the reason was clear in the books, but they did not make it as clear in this. The real reason was they did not want the rest of the world to realize that the plague came from us.
Right.
And they were basically going to die on that hill because, like, if our country is going down, we're going to make sure that nobody knows it was us that did it, that destroyed it.
But also because I think the government likes control and they don't like to panic people.
Right.
Also, they like to keep us dumb.
Panicking people by exerting control.
Like, I guarantee you, if there was something that happened in Roswell in the 1950s, and the government knew about it, and yes, I know, I understand that the nowadays thing is that they've let all the files be public and acknowledged that there was shit that went on back then, and that aliens are real. But I still think that the government likes to cover things up.
They do. A good example of that, actually, in real life. We have actually seen this whole thing in real life, where the federal government has usurped power in order to cover up protests and actual speech, in order to try and calm the populace, which unfortunately had the opposite effect.
Yeah.
So, but that's the idea, is that when the federal government tries to do it, it always ends up going the opposite direction. And they have that scene in the book and in the film where you have that radio show host who is the only one in her booth because everybody else is sick. And she's one of the few that was immune. And of course, she gets gunned down for telling the truth about what's going on.
Right.
And the book goes into a lot more depth about the military doing what they did. And it was
Peggy Bates cameo there.
It was really good. That cameo was excellent. And the and
the fact that Fran and her father were listening to it, that was almost like that moment was like the same reaction that people actually got when they heard the War of the Worlds the first time.
Right. Only that was a hoax.
I mean, one of the things that was different in this one and in the books is the military is a little bit more competent in this one because they actually had their people with masks. They didn't let their soldiers have any facial or disease protection at all in their enforcement in the book, which I'm like, oh, y'all just killing all your own soldiers. No wonder half of them turn against you at the end of that.
Well, what was it? What was it? That scene in Futurama where Zap is like, "I will gladly sacrifice wave upon wave of my own men to defeat the enemy," and then one of them
maxed out their kill counts.
What's that?
He maxed out their kill count. But I mean, that was screwed up, and the stuff that they had with the military. Because you always wonder in these post-apocalyptic things, like, what's going on with the military? What are they doing? And they were doing some screwed up stuff. Some of them went AWOL and did some weird things. Like one of them, like a bunch of people who were, people of color who were going to be basically sacrificed, changed it over and then took over this game show broadcast and were just killing people off randomly on stage. And Fran was actually watching that while her father was dying, thinking, boy, this is weird. This is a weird angle that they're going for. It was definitely, I admit the book did better in that aspect, but you only have so much time.
Correct. Ultimately, we do have to bring some of these characters together. So, Larry Underwood ends up trying to sleep with Nadine, but she's just not having any of it, and then she ends up just leaving him.
First, they get out of New York or try.
Correct.
To New York.
Did they introduce Nadine with Larry in New York?
Yeah.
Did they have Joe? Did she have Joe with her?
Joe?
The kid.
No, she's not Nadine.
Because
that's the other.
In the book, it was an older woman who's kind of genteel, and then she ends up overdosing.
They may have had that, but that wasn't in the movie, I don't think.
No.
I think the movie just has him meet Nadine, doesn't he, in New York, and then they escape together instead?
Well, Larry ends up meeting up with Nadine. Nadine is not the chick that he ends up with in the end, anyways.
Well, no, but
here,
I was trying to think of because in the book he gets together with an older woman, and he ends up being kind of abusive and a dick to her, and she ends up ODing when they finally escape New York together, and that's one of the things that shapes Larry's. Basically, it shapes Larry a lot. Mentally.
Yeah, in the book it does, but that doesn't happen. He just
so they kind of give him, and you see that also kind of screws with Nadine's motivation because Joe was a huge part of her motivation.
Well, Joe wasn't even part of Nadine's life. Joe was the kid that showed up with the other chick,
See,
which
and
he ends up with.
he was originally with her, and the reason why she eventually, because she was a school teacher, Nadine was, and she was this kind of mousy school teacher character who ended up becoming something else. But for the longest time, she had said that she was going to be with Joe, who was mute and feral, like he had a kitchen knife and was trying to kill Larry with it. But as he bonded with Larry and he started speaking and becoming more there, she saw less need for her there, and she ends up going with Flag. Okay, well, okay, so that was all left out. All right, sorry.
Yeah, all that was left out. What happens is that they tried to hook up a couple of times while they're traveling, and eventually she has enough, and she leaves him a note, and she's like, "Bye, see you later." But part of it was because Randall Flagg was telling her to leave Larry and all that jazz, and ultimately we actually see her coupling with Randall Flagg several times throughout the mini series.
Did she? Again, I apologize because it's been a while since I watched the series, and my most recent thoughts of the book. Did she end up hooking up with Flag before or after she does the terrorist act in Boulder?
Before.
No, technically it was after.
Because I know in the book it's after.
He met her in her dreams several times.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
They didn't actually meet until she had already abandoned Harold.
Because that's one where they really diverge, because Nadine travels with Larry and the whole group like all the way to Boulder, and then
in the book, yes. In the miniseries, no. She does not go all the way to Boulder with him. She leaves him for a period of time, but she comes in on one with Stephen King and his character.
So they kind of make her a sexier version of herself in the series, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Right, more sensual type character, I was going to say.
Yeah, she's definitely not mousy.
So yeah,
she's definitely more if looks could kill kind of person. But then her hair starts turning a shade of white as the miniseries goes on, and it's almost like they give her Storm type hair.
Yeah, that's that definitely was in the book. So that was in the book.
Yeah, that part was in the book, but in between,
Flag, yeah.
In between, Larry is sitting on a vehicle, and you can see a stream of cars behind him. And suddenly, a woman with a little kid, a feral kid, shows up, and them two make cozy, and I guess eventually them two marry sometime along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Because eventually he's and when Nadine comes to Boulder and she tries to talk to Larry, he basically tells her that he's married. Why are you doing this? You know,
in a way, it's kind of it kind of shortchanges her a little bit, because it gives her a little less of determination into her fate. Because a lot of it now, having her leave like that does still have that, but I do feel like it shows more of a. It's kind of interesting to see how she is, how she could have conceivably, if
when she comes and talks to
a little earlier, she would have joined with Boulder instead of with Flag.
When she comes and talks to Abigail, she is forced to talk to her by Randall Flagg, because it's basically kind of a fuck you to Abigail, and she feels the evil that's inside of her right away. And I don't know about you, but there is definitely something off about Nadine's character, anyways, because she's starting to go crazy.
Well, that part is really, I guess that part does happen in the book because she's got that dual personality that she doesn't want to be a part of the evil. She's always known since she was like a teen, when she had her first opportunity to, lose her virginity, essentially, that she was meant for something more, but she didn't know what. So she always protected herself and her purity for Flag, but she never knew who it was. And she never dreamed of Mother Abigail, so she ended up having that. Then she was a preschool teacher. She was going to be a spinster, essentially, because she was in her 30s in the book.
And I always felt like Nadine in the miniseries that she did fall in love with Larry.
Well, she was, and she wanted to be with Larry, but she ended up hesitating too long, and then Larry ended up hooking up with I can't think of her name, the woman that he ends up hooking up with instead. And
well, yeah. Well, the kid Joe was did not show up with Nadine, so that I guess that was something that they changed.
And it was actually the fact that Joe no longer needed her. That first off, Joe was one of the reasons why she was able to abstain from getting together with Larry in the first place, because he was another reason for her to stay. But then when he realized that Joe was actually opening up to Larry and getting more in line with Larry and his girlfriend, she didn't feel that her need was there. So she ended up hooking up with, she said, well, Flag needs me still. And she gave one more attempt, but the attempt was too late because Larry had already hooked up. And he decided to, and old Larry would have probably hooked up with her, but the Larry that by the time she got there had developed a feeling of responsibility and a feeling of loyalty. So he ended up trying to stay pure to it, or true to her. And that's, like I say, I felt like that was very well done.
Even though he was tempted by Nadine, because there was definitely some temptation shown in the miniseries between Larry and Nadine at the time.
Well, they both loved each other, and they would have both. I think that if she had just, again, that was that idea. Is like if she had just acted a little sooner, it could have turned out all differently. And I think that was on purpose to make it seem like, that choice between good and evil sometimes rests on just a hair. Or in King's case, the random versus the purpose. But I'll hit on that at the end.
So now I'm going to go back to Nick. Nick ends up traveling with Tom Moon. And I do think that that the chick that they run into who
that chick was crazy.
Yeah, she was nuts.
That should have been the one that what's her name played in the remake. What was her name? The woman with Johnny Depp, Amber Heard. That's the one that Amber Heard should have played.
Yeah, maybe. But in any case,
she was a bit too old for the character, but it was there because the character was a teenager, but she was obviously borderline in her traits.
Yeah, she was schizoid. I think just a little bit. But when she finds out that Nick cannot speak or whatnot, she still thinks he's kind of hot. But the way that she talks about Tom and whatnot, I think even Nick is kind of getting that she's not really caring about him, and She just wants him for his body. So ultimately, he kind of just shucks her off of him, and because of the dismissal that Nick had towards her, it was just a very short-lived situation.
She's actually a good example of King setting things up for later down the line. I mean, her character comes up later because she's in Vegas and recognizes Tom. And,
Correct.
And they did that she was introduced specifically for that purpose.
And she's also the one that is the shouter of, as soon as Trash Can Man shows up with the nuclear A-bomb. He's got a bomb! And it starts to panic for people. And that's when Randall Flagg tries to people into where are you going, you pussies? You know.
I love the guy who played Trash Can Man. He did such a good job with it.
Oh,
as a mental health therapist, as somebody who's seen schizophrenia many more times than he would like to admit, he does an amazing job of doing it.
His brains were cooked beyond belief. He was baked the entire time.
Quite literally, after his wander in the desert, where he had those, it must have been, I guess, 2nd-degree burns over his face and everything.
I was telling Tammy that Trash Can Man was like one of my favorite characters of the entire miniseries, because
y'all need to
he does look like he's like kind of crispy.
Yeah, he's kind of crispy almost the entire time. But when Randall Flagg first talks to Trash Can Man, he talks to him as if he respects him, and the fact that he respects him, and he reminds Trash Can Man of all the people who abused him as a child. I feel like of all of the bad people that Randall Flagg was trying to initiate into his whole like Vegas reign, Trash Can Man is actually the most well-rounded character.
Trash has two things that Flagg wants. A, he's extremely good with machines. And B, he has a habit of being able to find weaponry and return with it. Unfortunately, he found too big a weaponry that he returned with at the end.
and that's the other thing is, and this is another thing Flagg values. Trash is extremely loyal. He keeps saying, "My life for you." He is devoted to Flagg. And when he goes and gets the nuke, it's not because he's betrayed him or he's trying. I think it probably was started just by him kind of giving into the voices. But
did they actually do the whole thing in the series? It's been a little bit.
Yeah.
Where, see, the reason why in the book he went out to do it is because because everybody liked Trash over in Vegas,
right?
And one of them actually said something that triggered the voices. So Trash ended up setting a bunch of cluster bombs over and killing several of Flagg's best pilots. And realized
they didn't do that.
He ended up saying, "Oh shit!" So he fled, and he got the bomb as a way of trying to basically ask for forgiveness.
See, that didn't happen. He just went and got it.
He did something. He did something.
He blew up a nuclear power plant of some kind.
No, before leaving Vegas, he did.
Yeah, whenever I see the oil things, I always think of Trash Can Man. Whenever I told my wife when we were going over to
Bumsy bump
to DC,
Bumsy bump. My life for you, my life for you.
Go ahead, Jacob. Sorry.
No. I was just I think he did something before he left Vegas, and I cannot remember what it was, but it was something that undermined what they were doing.
Because in the books, they had people training to fly fighter jets in order to eventually bomb Boulder, but Trash Can Man ended up basically killing most of them because basically one of them said something that triggered the voices.
I think he did blow something up. But whatever he did, Flag gives orders that at first he wants him found, but then Lloyd keeps asking about Trash, and Flag kind of keeps changing his answer. But it's he basically says, when you find him, he's been good, mostly. He's been good, but his purpose is over, basically, is what Flag's saying. So he's like, just make it quick. Like he likes tormenting and destroying people, but with Trash, he's like, make it quick.
Well, he almost feels a kinship with Trash.
That's what he says. He says, I like the guy. I feel a kinship.
Which is why he said he'll put him out as his second man at the right hand of where he sits.
And eventually, it was the fact that he ended up killing and destroying the Flag's ability to bomb Boulder that was when he was finally able to be convinced that Trash was a liability. Mm-hmm. Did they do the part where Trash had hooked up with the one guy that Flag killed with the wolves?
No,
they did not.
So, but yeah, I mean that the idea that he set up there is the reason why Flag ended up doing what he did to Harold, was because Flag, as Jake said, he does value loyalty, and Harold, for instance, was valuable, but unfortunately Harold would have eventually turned on Flag, or had the potential to, because he was intelligent and because he was a independent thinker. Flag didn't want to take the chance.
And probably also there was always the chance that if Fran had said the right thing or done the right thing, he probably would have dumped Flag to go to her.
Well, that's the thing. And I mean, with somebody like God, what was his name? I'm all losing all the names today. That's how it is. And like his secondhand man, what was his name? Lloyd. I mean, the thing about Lloyd is Lloyd was competent, but he wasn't intelligent.
No.
And Flag realized that was the perfect kind of person for a secondhand man. He wasn't intelligent enough to usurp his power, but he had just enough loyalty and just enough brains to be a second in command.
Lloyd was a yes man.
Right. Well, that's what he wanted. And and one of the things that we left out was Lloyd's introduction, which came before most of that.
Yeah, I was getting to that. So Lloyd, he had a partner when he first started out, and the partner was a little bit more chaotic. He was the one that whenever they went and did a bank heist, I think was the one who initiated it.
Let's pokerize them. They actually ripped off people in the mob.
Yeah.
They learned there was a drug thing going on, and they basically came in, shot every single one of the drug dealers, and took all of their pot, which was illegal at the time. And had this giant stack of it that they were planning on selling. And Poke seemed to be a little bit too into the killing.
Yep. And it just so happened that there was way too much firepower at the place that they decided to rob this time, and there was way too quick of a response time in this small town that they ended up being in. So at the end of everything, Poke ended up dead, and well, Lloyd ended up in jail. So
and Miguel Ferrer did an amazing job acting as Lloyd. He did a great job.
Oh, yeah. I read that supposedly he wanted to play Flag, and Stephen King's like, thought he was too well known, and they wanted someone a little fresher faced. And apparently, he helped convince Jamie Sheridan to take the role. So, yeah. So he was working as his second hand, even behind the scenes.
It was, I mean, and Lloyd, he had it tough for a lot of things, but he was not a bright person, and they made sure that was plain at the very beginning, that Lloyd was not that bright. He just kind of followed along, and one of the things he thought was hilarious, was great, was that everybody in the prison was like so celebrating him because he had killed so many people, but then he found out that they're going to execute you, and he was not very happy about that.
No, it doesn't make sense that that Las Vegas was the area in which Randall Flagg set up shop, because it has always been known as Sin City.
Well, and of course, when when Flagg meets Lloyd, he's in a maximum security prison where everyone has died, and he has basically been left to starve. And he's starting to feel just a little bit desperate when Flagg shows up.
Well, yeah,
because thinking about eating the person,
and it's one of the reasons
he makes commentary on his rat tartar. So,
but that's definitely one of the reasons for his loyalty. He says a couple of times, he's like, "Well, Flagg may not be perfect, but he saved my life." So, that's
no. I do think that it's kind of interesting that every time you see in the dreams of Mother Abigail the fields of corn that surround her place, I feel like those are always a reference to his children of the corn.
Yeah, it's hard not.
He who walks among the corn, to me, is also Randall Flagg. So to me, it's like.
That's
kind of like
that is a theory. That is a theory that he could be the guy, the person who walks among.
She does specifically refer a few times to the rats in the cornfield, and we see them a couple of times. But yeah, could be he's got a few of those.
But
there was weasels in the corn in the book, which is kind of weird that they changed that. But I guess it's easier. Rats in the corn is much easier.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe they couldn't afford the weasels or couldn't find enough of them.
Yeah, those expensive weasels.
Well, Jimmy crack corn and I don't care. Jimmy crack corn and I don't care.
The weasels had better agents.
Yeah, they wanted too much money. They had to be supposed.
Yeah.
Well, and ultimately, Nick and his group are the first ones who show up in Kansas, where I believe that's where Mother Abigail is initially.
It's Nick and Tom have met up with Ralph Brentner, and I think it's the three of them that pull up.
Correct. Ralph Brentner is like seems to be like this farmer, and they don't really give him at all a backstory, and ultimately he ends up being like one of the guys who takes the last stand.
Right.
You know. So it's like I almost wish they would have fleshed him out a little bit, but
they didn't.
Why don't you tell us a little
in the book either?
Oh, they don't flesh him out that much in the book.
He literally just shows up and picks them up in the truck in the book, as well as. So that's actually not that different.
I think he got a little more backstory, but again, it wasn't like you said. He didn't get a full intro. Yeah. It was more like a little more information shared as the story went on. But this is kind of the part where we're starting to meet characters who just kind of show up.
Correct.
And
Stu ultimately does kill his captor, and he experiences some nightmarish like scenes in there when he first escapes. But when he does, in fact, actually escape, he then runs into an old man who was played by Ray Wellston, which we know is it played Martian on My Favorite Martian.
That was a nightmarish thing.
Yeah,
when it happened. And in the books, it was nightmarish when he got out, which it traumatized him to the point that when Harold actually said that's where we're going, which in Harold's defense, that was the logical thing. And the fact that Harold was able to stay calm under fire, that was one of the things that did make him, valuable. That like Stu was like, I ain't going in there.
Yep. So yeah. So
Gordon Bateman is our older gentleman, and
Yep.
he has this dog Kojak, who's apparently like the only dog that anyone knows of that survived. Yeah.
Yep. I know they talk about trying to find Kojak a wife throughout the thing.
Yep,
Right.
and from what I understand, that character of Kojak's owner is he's an artist of some sort,
Uh-huh.
and because he's actually painting a portrait when Stu first walks up to him.
He's a retired professor, and he's basically, and he actually has kind of a Zen approach to the whole thing. Like he's kind of feels like the world had gone a little off kilter, and this was a way for it to kind of course correct, I guess.
He was fine with it all, so because he was like, "Yeah, fine, let it all burn." It was going to crap anyway. Which like, well, I guess that's how I would look at it.
He's actually a little disappointed in Boulder when they try to get the power back on. He's like, "Do we really need it?"
He was very much against society coming back because it's, we're just going to make these same mistakes of the end. I mean, he wasn't really a painter as much as he was painting as a hobby at the end. He was a philosophy professor, which was kind of
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it makes sense in this whole beat because, of course, he provided the philosophy for Glenn and all the others as they were going through.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
He kind of takes on the mentor role for a lot of them.
I mean, Glenn was the cynic in a lot of ways, but he was also a sinner for a lot of that. So
I think he was an honest sinner, though. At the end of everything, I mean, Randall Flagg, when he finally had him in that jail cell, I think that what he said to him pissed Randall Flagg off.
Well, he laughed.
Yeah, he laughed at him.
He literally refused to bow to Flagg.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he laughed at Flagg's face, and that was the end of it. But
and that was the part where he tried to convince Lloyd that look at who you're serving, and Lloyd actually was he understood and processed what Glenn was saying, but that's when he's like, well, yeah, but he did save my life, and I'm going to throw in with him,
And the thing that I like about him is even after he shot at him, he was like, I forgive you, Lloyd.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lloyd was one of those that Flagg had thought about killing off, but then as time goes on, Lloyd was the most loyal. He knew that Flagg was evil at the end, and he knew it was on the wrong side, but at the end, he was resigned to the fact that, yes, I'm on the wrong side, but I've already cast my lot. There is no going back.
Yeah.
And
there were
that's sad.
There were a couple characters who did that. There's one part where Harold and Nadine are talking, and one of them, I can't remember which one, says, we're both damned already. And the other one just agreed,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting how in that relationship Harold became very abusive, both in the book and in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess a lot of that's just his repressed anger at all of the people who abused him in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I really did identify with Harold a lot at the beginning because I had a lot of anger. I still do, and in a lot of ways, but a lot of it was bullies. I mean, I remember watching one bully group get together and break a person's arm just for the fun of it and not get any punishment for it, even though they knew that it happened, just because they were like in the sports team. And I remember being so angry at that and the fact that you have so little power. When you finally get power, you end up becoming the abuser yourself. I mean,
Yep.
I think that there are several. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I could see myself having followed Harold's path if things had happened differently in life.
Right.
And so that's why I feel for Harold still. I don't identify with him as much as I used to, but I definitely feel for him in a way. It's just and Nadine as well. Both of them are victims in a way, but they both had their choices, and they ended up going with the wrong side.
Correct. So ultimately, there were people that Randall Flagg did send to spy on them, but I do think that Mother Abigail definitely inspired a lot of people. A lot of people liked her, and she was a very honest looking person and sounding person, and I think that's why they all followed her to wherever she was, and ultimately ended up in that. Now, I do think that when Harold became part of the exterminating of the bodies team, I thought that was an interesting thing that they had, where they were cleaning out the town of the sick, and ultimately, I think, weren't they incinerating them or something like that?
Well, that was actually part of where Harold hit his crossroads at the end, where he had his final shot, because though Nick had caught on to the fact that Harold was kind of working for the bad guy in a lot of ways, because Harold had become sort of a politician. He was fat and ugly at the beginning of the series, but as he went through, after Fran had supposedly betrayed him, even though we know that really there was no real betrayal, it was just there. He read her diary, found out that she had basically been talking about how disgusting he was and all of this stuff, and he decided he wanted vengeance. So he ended up, stopping eating all the paydays, and which is funny because Larry ended up bringing a bunch of paydays over to him as a way of hey, I really admire you, because he ended up following Harold's candy wrappers and had this idealized version of Harold in his mind. Harold ended up becoming almost a politician with his fake smile, and he had his choice, and he had thought about it because he had started to gain a lot of respect on the burial crew. They even gave him a nickname, Hawk, and people actually were really liking him. And he had to decide whether to play the long game and eventually be able to force his way onto the council, where they were trying to block him out initially.
Which is funny. He kind of got screwed in the miniseries because they made him out to look like he was a little bitch when it came to the reaction of the bodies and stuff. And that's all that they showed of the crew. They didn't show any of the.
And they all reacted like that in the book. They were all throwing up and stuff because they weren't used to it.
It ain't easy being a zombie janitor.
And I think Stephen King's reaction or whatnot, his response to Harold's throwing up was like, "Oh, you get used to it over time."
I mean, the first time I saw a dead body, I was hardly able to deal with it. And I've seen enough of them nowadays that it does still affect me, but I could do it without throwing up. But I can't imagine having to do that like he did. I mean, like I said, the worst thing I've ever seen is somebody decapitated in front of me, and that was that left me scarred for a while. I guess still in a way. So I mean, I can imagine, people seeing all these people dead, and the thought they had was like cordwood. I think they mentioned cordwood in this thing too. Just think of them as cordwood, and pick them up. And that was how Harold gained a lot of political clout. He would have if he had decided to stay, and he debated it about it. The Franny not trusting him was one of the things that helped move him towards betraying them in the end. It's like, there's no way they're going to trust me. They're always going to treat me as an outsider. They're always going to be the bullies. I'm always going to be the bullied unless I stand up for myself. And then he ends up.
Which, of course, we kind of been going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But I believe the third installment is the one called The Betrayal.
Yeah.
And the second one, like I said, we're probably kind of skipping back and forth between the last three, I guess. But
correct. And there's definitely some growth on both sides, good and evil, that you can see going throughout the miniseries. Now, ultimately, Harold does. And this is the thing. Just like Mother Abigail can talk to people through dreams, so can Randall Flagg. He actually, in a dream, told Harold exactly how to get the TNT in order to, have his revenge on them. And. Also in dreams, I think Randall Flagg told Nadine to go and be with Harold.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Nadine still saves herself for Randall Flagg, but she's like, Harold, there are things that I can teach you that there are many things that we can do without doing the dirty deed.
Right. The main things we can do without doing that. Yeah. Although if we're before we actually get into the betrayal, that episode is the part where we really are hitting the ground running with meeting new people without much intro. Like, I think the episode starts with someone dying and Stu is trying really hard to save them. And that, I think, is where we meet Susan and the Judge Ferris. And wasn't there another one in that scene that was new?
Trying to remember.
You've also got Stu, Fran, Glenn, and Harold and Kojak. Yeah. It was probably just those two and the Dying Man, I guess, were the new ones.
Yep, and the Dying Man ended up dying. It was an appendix that had ruptured on the guy.
Something like that, yeah.
And Stu was so wanting to help save him, but she basically told him that, hey, he's dead. So they do actually bury the guy, and I think they continue onwards, and that's when they ultimately end up in Boulder, and Stu meets Abigail for the first time, and that's a good meeting because they'd seen each other in dreams, and it's just amazing to finally see her and meet her. And how the hell does she know his name, kind of thing, And
I don't know if we mentioned before, maybe we did. We mentioned that like Nick and Tom and Ralph are the first to arrive in Kansas.
Yes.
When they moved to Boulder, they've picked up a couple of additional people, but there's still a small group.
Correct.
And Boulder is where everyone has to come from there on, including Stu's party.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there's something about the fact that they all know where Mother Abigail has moved to initially. And Fran mentions certain things about dreaming about Abigail over time too, and ultimately you also have to remember that the military. We did cover the military part where ultimately the guy in charge of the military ends up shooting himself. But
that happened a
Yeah,
lot.
like I say, that to me was anticlimactic versus what it was, but it was good enough. I mean, he came and he was repentant. I do feel like it's interesting because the idea of the military had to. I mean, the guy basically had known, we were damned doing this in the first place, and he accepted that fact towards the end. It's like he knew that his decision was, though he was high on drugs and alcohol at the time, he stayed drunk and high the entire time throughout that. I do still feel it was a good, solid, forgive
portrayal.
me.
Oh, you can't go wrong with Ed Harris.
even though the book, the guy basically said, you know what, I already know I'm damned for what I did. I don't repent it, but he ended up basically ending things where he started, which was basically watching the dude with the soup. He did get the guy out of the soup. He got the guy out of the soup.
Tammy, you were going to say something?
The one thing I never understood though is how Boulder, Colorado got picked. How did they go to that house and go there?
And that was probably something that Mother Abigail was told in her conversations with the Lord,
It was actually geographical according to King, but because of its distance from Vegas, because of the mountains, it was picked in that way.
Yeah,
but
makes sense.
Good and evil.
It was a war plan.
I mean, Vegas was the obvious choice for the bad guy. I mean, shoot, you yourself would understand that the fact of how environmentally destructive Vegas is, and how destructive Flag is in general, you would think Vegas would be the perfect thing. And
ultimately, the soldiers that were underneath Randall Flag, they started having some kind of I mean, I know it wasn't swastikas, but it was red and black colors, and I'm not exactly sure what that symbol was on their military like uniforms, but they started to have kind of a Nazi like feel to them,
I mean, there are two things that King looks at. The what was it? The the purpose versus the random, which is a theme that he has done throughout most of his, especially his tower-related books. The Insomnia explains it the best, but which is funny because he actually puts the book Insomnia in his Dark Tower series. Whereas the idea of the random being more of this chaos, let chaos reign type feel, and the purpose being more of an ordered way of doing things. And it's funny how it works because the purpose represents Mother Abigail with Boulder, even though they're a democracy and they kind of feel more free, whereas the random is Flag and Vegas, which is more authoritarian. But neither side is necessary. I mean, Flag is evil in its own sense, but neither side's people or neither civilization is necessarily evil or good in a lot of ways. I mean, Flag specifically starts crucifying people, but only for like using drugs and doing heinous crimes. There is no drug abuse. Yes, alcohol, of course, but it's Vegas,
which is the exact opposite of what you think a devil would actually do.
But that's the point: is that but that's the point, is that that looking at it on the surface, you can't necessarily say that one side is more evil than the other. Matter of fact, the people in Vegas believe the people in Boulder are evil.
Yep. So,
I mean, look
and
you never know what evil is. I mean, the people who feel like the people on the side of evil feel that they're on the side of good. That's just how it is.
and so ultimately, once they turn the power back on in Boulder, by this time, most of the people who had dreamed of Mother Abigail have arrived at Boulder and have formed a community of sorts.
Mhm.
So once they actually congregate with each other, they start trying to put together their own kind of formal government, almost like a First Continental Congress type thing, where they select a certain group of people and then let them vote, but it ultimately was unanimous.
Well, the nominations were actually put forth by Mother Abigail, and Harold ends up standing up, doing a bit of grandstanding, but basically, why don't we vote on the whole thing en totem? And someone else seconded it, and they went ahead and did it because and it
Yep.
was yeah.
That was that was something I like. I wish that everything in Congress would go that easily.
Yeah. Well, in the
Well, I don't know
books,
about everything.
Abigail distanced herself from the process. Like, that's not really what we're here for.
Well, before that, though, she because I think before this whole thing happened, like actually while it happened is when she went missing.
Disappeared. Yeah.
She had
Well,
been saying already that she felt prideful, that she
Yeah.
felt ambivalent about being in such a position of people. A couple people even started to like bow to her or whatever, and she's like, "Oh no, don't do that." Like she
that's
felt
why I feel
really,
like she almost kind of did like her own what is it, the Australian walkabout,
yeah, yeah,
in a sense.
yeah. Again, she just really felt very deeply ambivalent about having everyone look to her for all the answers. And yeah.
Well, and when she came back, she was I believe that Randall Flagg had actually like hurt her physically or mentally or something like that, because she was basically on her deathbed at that moment, but then of course I do believe that there was a moment where she had a dream, and Fran was in it. I'm trying to remember who else, possibly Stu. Um,
Well,
and
she didn't return until after the actual betrayal where Harold,
correct,
yeah. So that we should definitely mention if we haven't really what went down there.
correct. And this council that they had put together, they ended up selecting three people to go out and spy
Well,
on Vegas.
back up, I guess. So the council, I believe, was Stu, Fran, Glenn,
Correct.
Ralph, Nick. Was it Susan? I think it was, or what am I? Yeah, Susan. Was that it? Was there another one? Oh, Larry.
Yep,
Yeah,
Larry.
yeah. But yeah, they had that idea about sending the spies.
And one of them ended up being the judge character, because they thought that the judge would not be thought much of being that kind of person. Which all we get to see is him go off inside of a vehicle and then suddenly be sought out after, unless that was like after he'd done his spying.
Well, they were all sent off individually without being alerted to who the others were.
Correct.
And they all chose their own. Well, Tom went with suggestions implanted by Glenn in a hypnotism.
Correct.
But the doctor or the judge and Dana were both given, I guess, they just did what they thought would work best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is like when he saw the next full moon, Tom would return.
Right.
But they wanted to make sure that they used hypnotism so he wouldn't give anything away.
Yeah.
Right.
And they found that he had been very prone to being hypnotized earlier on when Tom would go into these trances where apparently during the times of trances, Tom was actually not just perceptive, but hyper perceptive.
Right.
Which again, King likes to use people who are special as his people who have a kind of psychic powers and abilities.
I almost feel like Tom was like his shiner in here.
And when they asked him about it, he called him. I think he called himself God's Tom. Like that was the Tom inside, I guess you could say. But yeah, that was. And actually, I don't remember. Maybe you guys remember. I don't remember Dana having a huge role, but I feel like her role in the miniseries was very limited and was almost entirely as a spy. Like
her role in the books was mostly limited to when that group with Harold and Harold, Stu, and Harold, Stu, and Fran were had rescued the group from the slavers, who had basically been taking women into basically sex slavery, and they ended up saving them, which is where they eventually found those people. So she was one of the people there, so she wanted to contribute.
You know, I've always somewhat thought that the Stand kind of followed somewhat of a biblical trail. So, in a sense, Dana, was like the woman that was close to Jesus, Mary, who ultimately was a woman of the street, but and people thought like differently back then.
Okay.
You know, why should this woman be close to Jesus? Kind of thing. And I feel like when Larry and the other guy were on either side being crucified, I feel like that was like the crosses on Calvary moment, where they except whereas in the Bible only one of them went up to heaven, this time both of them went up to heaven.
I guess I get that reference, but I'm not sure about the Dana is Mary thing. That's interesting. But but anyway, but yeah, Dana, it turns out, has actually made the acquaintance of Lloyd and been his quote unquote girlfriend when she is revealed to be the spy. The judge is unable to make it to Vegas because Flagg knows he's coming and orders him killed. Am I remembering correctly that the dipshit who ends up destroying him and his own partner is the character played by Sam Raimi?
I think so.
Raimi has a small cameo in the show as some silly name. I can't remember.
And
I feel like it was that guy.
the
That's
judge
right.
was actually the first show that Flag's power was actually slipping,
Right.
because Flag initially didn't want the judge to be killed. He wanted the judge to be brought before him.
Well, he said don't
He
mark.
wanted his head.
He wanted his head, and this
Yeah.
guy ended up destroying his face.
Yeah. So, and again, I guess it's like I say, book versus because
Yeah.
the book he wanted the judge alive.
Okay.
Yeah.
He actually even envisioned returning the judge with some story, like with what he did with the female spy, was basically the idea of kind of filling them with a different false hope, to say, hey, we're not doing anything bad here.
Right.
And even a lot of them, even with her over there, she had a hard time seeing it, because she got to be friends with people, she got to see people as they were, and a lot of them were not these outright evil people.
Bobby Terry. Bobby Terry's the character that Raimi
Yeah.
plays. I think it was that guy.
But the guy messed up things, and then Flag basically did that. And they had talked about, like, yeah, I hear he takes the form of a crow or a raven, and he could be anywhere. And then Flag just kind of manifests and then butchers the dude.
Yeah. And am I again? No, never mind. That's not it. Never mind. Huh.
Well,
the character of Restore. I'm trying.
But it is kind of interesting when you think about it. A lot of the characters weren't necessarily evil in Vegas.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of them, like I said, a lot of them thought that the people in Colorado were evil because they were told that they were evil.
And also a lot of them, as they say, the natives were getting restless. A number of them were planning to or thinking about jumping ship by this point. And that was one of the reasons Flag's power was slipping.
It was actually an example of his power slipping, that so many were leaving as they were.
Well, and the fact that he was bringing back this woman that was supposed to be like the mother of his child or whatnot, the way that she was acting was making the natives nervous too. So Nadine, well, we do have to talk about her and her demise too.
Well, first, most of them didn't get to interact with her much, although Lloyd did. But when Flag came back with her, he was so wrapped up in himself that crazy bitch from before had figured out who the other spy might be. And Lloyd tried to tell Flag, and Flag's just like, come up to my office later. Well, let's say 1.
He was so happy with Nadine being there, and him feeling like he was victorious.
Right. But before that, though, Dana kills herself rather than accept Flag's deal. And
which is not something that Flag wanted.
No, or expected. But he tried to get her to rat out the other because she didn't know. But then, and this was the part I mentioned earlier. I can't remember if this was in the book. I think it was. Brandon probably knows better than I do. I love this thing, though. Flag knew the judge was one of the spies. He knew Dana. He tells Lloyd, I knew about her from the beginning, which I'm sure made Lloyd feel great. But he can't figure out the other one. And he's telling Dana this. He's like, I can't figure it out. Every time I try to think of it, all I see is a moon. I see a moon in my head. And I'm like, I love that little detail. And she immediately knows who he's talking about. You see.
He does. And I know that when they were sent out separately to not know who the other spies were. But she did notice Tom in a truck.
No, the crazy girl noticed Tom. Dana knew immediately because he said the word moon.
Yeah. Well, she knew then, but when Tom was working with some of the other workers, she she had actually seen Tom.
Well, maybe she had. I don't know.
Well, yeah, a lot of it was exactly like it was in the book. Is
Yeah.
that Flag was pretty much enamored with the fact that he feels like he's on top of things.
Yeah.
But one of the things they show with Flag at the beginning, and they're a little bit more in depth with who Flag is in the book, showing that he's been around for a while, but he loses memory from existence to existence. And part of his thing is that he was starting to remember everything, and he was starting to gain these powers, but for some reason, some of his powers were starting to fail him and become weaker. And this was being concerning to him, but he thought with Nadine, things are back on top again. So he totally ignored the fact that, what the woman had seen, because he's like, I got my stuff. I'll talk with you later, Lloyd. Just dismissing him. And then when she ends up, and he thinks to himself he's all powerful, trying to exert his power over the spy, letting him know, it's like, look, I'm just going to send you back. I just need a few little bits of information. Because, we have no bad intention towards you guys. We want to show you that we're here for peace. But he's not. He's here for bombing the hell out of them and killing them all. But she sees through it and eventually kills herself, which Flag feels is definitely a loss of his power, because he lost the ability to control her or to keep her from doing that. And then when Nadine does it, that's a real show that he ends up losing his control or has lost some of his power. And this is very concerning to him.
Oh yeah, well, I think when Nadine kills herself and the baby that is supposedly inside of her, that takes a lot of his power away.
Right. Although, if I remember correctly, in the book, he killed her and immediately regretted it.
She tricks him into throwing her out the window.
Right. He threw her out the window.
Yeah. because of course Flag has that again. I think that's one thing that the actor here does well, is showing that charisma, but also that anger underneath the surface.
Right.
Well, yeah, because right after Nadine does her, or wait, no, a little bit before that, he gets all angry, throws the room around and smashes a bunch of shit. And then he comes back in the room all nice to Lloyd, and he's like, hey, Lloyd, how was that drink? It's all over the wall.
Right.
Because if you look at it like every flag, because Flag technically resides on a level of the tower, there are different flags for every world. Like the flag in Eyes of the Dragon is very different from the flag in The Stand, who is very different from the flag from the main Dark Tower books. They're the same person, but different. Sort of like how the Crimson King manages to exude pressure and actually rule over them all, because he's on a higher level of the tower. If you look at the books, just throwing grenades off of one of the balconies.
It's almost like the Spider-Verse before the Spider-Verse.
Well, that's the idea, is that it is a multiverse in a lot of ways. And the center, a rose, which has all of the universes in it, and then surrounded by a field of roses, all of them having an infinite amount of universes.
Mm-hmm.
But no sense in going into that. But that's why I consider this flag a different flag. We're having him played by a different character, like Matthew McConaughey, and the Dark Tower actually works just as well, because though they are the same character, they are different at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so now we're coming around to the tail end of this adventure. Nadine does in fact fall off the balcony, kill herself, and leave Flag with a little less power. Meanwhile, five of the good guys are tasked at the towards the moment when Mother Abigail is ailing away in her bed. She tasks several of the people to go out and make a stand.
Well, basically, the surviving members of her committee, except for Fran.
Yeah. Because Fran's pregnant, and that allows her to safety. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But they're not to take any food or water with them. They have to journey out on this kind of religious journey as they go.
And I believe she said just the clothes on their back, which is kind of weird that Larry brought his guitar. It's like, oh, is that an article of clothing?
Hey,
it's part
it might have been
ensemble.
on his back at the time.
Yeah, it might have been, but I say 5 because of Kojak.
Yeah. Kojak is the honorary.
Kojak is a part of their quartet.
Yes, he is. He is, just like Boy was.
So they end up. That means it's Ray, that cowboy farmer, the artist, Glenn, and ex-history, Glenn, and Larry Underwood.
Larry and Stu.
And they all end up having to say goodbye to their loved ones and go off to make the stand. Now, one of them is not supposed to make it.
Well, the way that Mother Abigail says it is kind of misleading, and it does play out in the end. She says one of you will fall by the way, and I can't really tell you who will come back, basically.
They didn't even bother with that in the book.
What's that?
They didn't even bother with that in the book.
They didn't?
Nope. They just let whatever dominoes fall.
They said you got to all get there.
Did they? I don't remember that. Because here it actually works pretty well, because when Stu falls and breaks his leg, he is basically able to convince Larry mostly because of her words. Like,
I think that was put in with Mother Abigail so that people would know that bad things are going to happen.
I think they did it to make it simplified because it took a lot more in the book than it did in this. Yeah. So having her actually say it, I think, makes it easier.
Yeah.
And a part of that was the end of Larry's journey to truly become a leader and not selfish, to become selfless in his own way. Because in reality, the true leader at the end of this is Larry.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Larry ultimately does become the true leader at the end, and
it is ultimately he and Ralph who are making the stand, if you will.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, though, of course, the ones that get there are him, Glenn,
right,
and Ralph.
Well, Flag has a posse waiting for them, and
they surrender to it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they keep saying like, "Why are y'all waving all your guns around? Whatever. We're here for this."
And Larry, one of the guys comes towards him with handcuffs, and he backs away from the dude, and there almost seems like there's going to be a fight, and he's like, "Hey, there's really no need for the handcuffs because we're letting you have us."
Right.
Well,
luckily, I guess you could say Lloyd's field lieutenant, I guess you could say, is a dude named Barry Dorgan, who's a former police officer, and he does do a pretty good job of managing the situation and keeping it from getting crazy. they find that he at least is someone they can talk to, even if he's on the wrong side, which he is. But
And I guess I kind of like Randall Flagg's introduction to Glenn because he's speaking to the cockroach as if the cockroach is a person. And then suddenly Randall Flags ends up stomping on it. And
he's musing about how he probably won't last another day, but that roach will be around for some time yet to come,
And Randall stomps on it and is like, fuck the cockroach.
I don't think he said that. But
no, he didn't. But it was basically what it came down to in the end.
I don't think ABC would have allowed that.
No, I don't think so either. But it was amusing to me that was his attitude towards it. So.
Yeah.
But we know what happened to Glenn. He basically said his piece, got Randall mad, laughed in his face, and Lloyd ended up killing him. And the response to the other guys, what happened to Glenn? Oh, he tried to escape.
Yeah.
Custody.
Which of course they knew was bullshit, but
And they are in fact brought in on a paddy wagon, with I guess the mob of Las Vegas pounding on their vehicle. Rat Man is there with them. They somewhat insult Rat Man.
We should mention that in the meantime, that Tom had actually gone back as he was supposed to, or headed back, and he finds Stu and helps get him up out of the gully where Stu has been laying with. He says he finally got the flu. I couldn't. I'm not sure if he really did or if he was just feverish or whatever, but he was.
He did, in a sense, have the flu because he did start coughing, and there was a medication that evidently Nick knew about.
Yeah, right.
But you can tell it.
Well, even though Nick had already got blowed up, which actually we kind of, I feel like we mentioned that and then kind of skipped on before really mentioning that Harold had planted a bomb in, I think it's Stu's house in the closet where they were, and Mother Abigail had warned them all psychically to get out of the house, and Nick went straight toward the bomb. And one thing that was kind of a neat touch was that Harold gave his confession over the radio before the bomb went off, but Nick was the only one there to hear it. So no one actually got to hear it, which I thought was kind of cool. But unfortunately, Nick and Susan and a handful of other people were killed in the explosion. Yeah. But
which was kind of a big thing to happen to them. They after that they weren't sure what was going to happen next.
Right. And Fran was injured, and that's where we meet she ends up in a bed next to Mother Abigail in the hospital, and that's where they get their marching orders. Although we'd already seen the dream where Fran was talking to her, and she got the guys are going to go to Vegas, and no, you need to stay behind and all that. But when Tom comes back and finds Stu, he says, Nick told me where you were. And we'd already seen Nick visit him in another dream. It's interesting that Nick has such a strong connection with Tom that even in death, he's still appearing in his dreams and helping him out. And that was kind of fun. Yeah.
Nick's
Oh, yeah.
Nick's continued role in the books is basically as a guide to Tom spiritually.
Right.
And eventually, I mean, it's really sad at the end where Tom has to finally let go of Nick so that Nick can pass on.
Right.
Well, yeah, because he kind of keeps him around, kind of more for sustenance, spiritual sustenance than anything else towards the end of the book. But
Nick was really the first person to really, really treat him as a friend, and as
and he got him, you know.
Yeah.
But so ultimately, in the end, Trash Can Man ends up bringing the A-bomb.
The bumpity bump.
The bumpity bump.
Bumpity.
My life for you! My life for you!
One of the things I used to criticize this for until I reread the book and realized, why am I criticizing it for being exactly like the freaking book, was the silly CG effect of the hand of God.
Yeah.
But that's exactly how it happens in the book. Flag shoots like some sort of like energy thing, and then it gets rebounded and becomes this hand of God, which grabs the nuke and sets it off. And I'm like, yeah, okay, it's as cheesy in this as the book. I guess I can't really give the serious to that.
I remembered. My first reaction of watching this was, my God, that ending was cheesy. I don't think it was that bad in the book, was it?
It was.
But this time around, I watched it and I'm like, okay, well, it's not as bad as I remembered.
It's the hand of God.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the whole concept of that, the random versus the whatever it was I had said prior. But the idea of having them both be opposed to each other throughout the whole of it. And in this case, but in some universes, one side is stronger than the other. And this side, the purpose is stronger than the random.
Now, in the book, is Randall Flagg destroyed?
No. Spoiler. I mean, Flagg gets away last minute, and it shows him getting away last minute, technically, at the end.
Yeah.
And Flagg ends up awakening with no memory on a place basically somewhere to say that island where no civilization came to, and them worshiping him as a god, and of course the process starting all over again.
Right. Because one thing they didn't really go into in the miniseries, but they did kind of in the book, was the idea that he doesn't fully remember his history.
No.
But he kind of remembers it. Like, he remembers being involved in things like Vietnam and, other big nasties.
That was one of the big things that they made, is that one of the things that happened as the plague was starting and so on is that he was starting to remember all of his different lives. And then towards the end, as he was losing power, he was forgetting almost everything up until this current life again. And that it comes and goes, sort of like a cycle. Yeah.
And then we do have to kind of follow Stu's kind of return, because he is like you said, saved by Tom. But he in fact does have the flu, but when he takes him to a cabin and whatnot and tries to give him a PB&J sandwich, it's not working.
Mostly down his throat.
that was like where Nick come. I don't know if it happened in this one, but Nick came in and basically taught Tom how to nurse him back to health.
Yeah, and he told him what meds to use, and and then there was the whole bit with Stu asked him, like, how did you know to use these? And he's like, Nick told me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had a long bit in the book where Stu managed to try and repay Tom by setting up a movie theater with a generator so that they could watch a movie together,
Mhm.
as in the hotel they set up throughout the winter. And they
Right.
decided, you know what? No, we're not going to wait out the winter. We're just going to go through
Which
the snow and the blizzard.
almost in a sense kind of reminds me of the moment in the Green Mile where he asked to see a flicker show.
Yeah.
You know, and he allows him to see the the one movie. So
Yeah. The old Esther Rogers movie.
yep,
Uh,
I'm in heaven.
and then, of course, when they get back to Boulder, who's there waiting for them but our boy Stephen King?
Yep, and they're about to shoot them if they don't respond. But thankfully they responded in kind, and that's when he's told Franny went into labor and had the kid.
And the kid has the flu. Yeah,
Correct.
actually, is one thing I don't think we mentioned, but Fran has been stressing over what if the baby dies because it has no immunity, and that's like, and they do make a point. I think they do make a point at the end of this one. We find out that Lucy, the woman that Larry had ended up with, is pregnant, and there's still that thought of there probably will be heavy mortality for the first few babies, but eventually it'll become endemic in the population, and we'll all be good again. But yeah.
I have a thought that maybe it's possible that Tom might have brought more of the medicine along, and that the doctor actually was able to get the medicine to the baby in time or whatnot. In that, sensibility that was a possibility that what might have happened, and to make sure that the baby was back to normal or whatnot. But they didn't really clue anything in that nature.
I mean, the whole thing with the baby was earlier in the books, baby was born again with somebody who was not immune to the flu and somebody who was, and the baby died. They were not able to do an autopsy on the baby because the woman basically snuck the baby away at night and buried it so that they would not have an autopsy on him. And she basically told Franny that basically all is lost. You should just sign off with the baby right now. It's dead.
And I also remember Campion and his wife had a child, and I remember the novel going into a little bit more detail about the death of the baby too.
Now, in all fairness, that child was probably not immune as much as because the whole concept was, will this child with somebody who is immune and somebody who is not immune survive? Because Jesse was obviously not immune. He died.
Yeah.
So that was the worry.
But they do say that mothers pass antibodies to their children. So it is possible. But yeah, I'd forgotten about that other case that was left out of the miniseries. So
where you had the woman who was immune, but the father was not, and then the child died, but they didn't know exactly if it was the flu or not because the woman wouldn't let him do the autopsy.
Right.
So Franny was constantly worried about that. And then, of course, the child gets the flu, but then pulls through, showing that this child was able to do it and giving humanity hope that there will be survival.
Right. And Lucy's kid theoretically would be the first one between two immune parents that we know of. So, we could find out.
And that's how it ends, right? And that's how the series.
Yeah, that's pretty much how the miniseries ends.
The book has like Fran and Stu basically going to Maine and leaving humanity for a while, saying, well, we'll eventually, when the child is old enough, bring them back to allow them to socialize. but we don't want to deal with humanity and leave it all behind. Which I think they could have just done without it at the end of that book.
They could have what?
They probably could have done without that section in the book, so it's fine if they ended it that way.
Yeah, I think it's fine that they ended it that way too. But now that we're at the end of everything, what did we think about production?
Mixed bag.
Yeah. It's a bit, like I said, is particularly when it comes to the graphics, the CG and stuff, it hasn't aged brilliantly.
But God, those makeup effects on the disease and the corpses and stuff like that looked really good.
Oh, yeah.
I think this won an Emmy for the makeup.
Yeah.
It won a couple of Emmys. I think one was for the makeup and one was for the sound.
And not the CG.
The makeup I thought the makeup was all right. I thought Mother Abigail's makeup could have been a little more convincing. Again, she was playing a woman who's like 40, 50 years older than she actually was. So that can sometimes be not brilliant. The burn makeup on Trash, though, I thought worked pretty decently.
Oh, yeah.
The
They definitely got down half baked and fully baked.
That plague makeup made him look definitely sick. That was really good there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But CG, oof.
And I actually watched some of the making of documentary, which was all a matter of like 6 minutes on the special features of the Artisan 2-disc that Tammy had for a moment, and they actually had several masks that were mold masks that were made for the different moments that you saw of Flag in the corn fields whenever he turned into the demon. They had different masks for different reasons, and I swear they had like 5 or 6 masks for him.
I will admit, it was back to that CG thing. When he transforms, the transformation parts were kind of like, I don't love this. But in terms of the rest of it, I think in terms of like the sets and the costuming and everything, I think they did pretty good with that for the most part.
I think practical effects are for the most part pretty solid.
Yeah.
It was the digital.
Well, I think everything.
Go ahead.
I think everything looked really realistic and everything. You know, you know, earlier in it, you know, when everybody was dying from the disease, and you saw the bodies and how people had just stopped what they were doing, and you know, the cars are all there and things. It's just it seemed like that this could be how it really was, you know.
Right.
And the different places that everybody was, I thought was really good too, you know, that all the backgrounds didn't like look the same. You know, you could tell that they were in this state or in that state, or you know what I mean, or in this area or that area. You know, they definitely, you know, were very good at the background for making things look different. You know, each area that they were in. You know,
right.
And the clothing seemed to be, you know, at the time that this is supposed to be, I don't think anybody was wearing anything too flamboyant, so their just casual clothing seemed to work just very well, you know.
Well, this whole miniseries, the time span that it had going on, it seemed like it happened within a matter of months. You know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think wasn't it like basically, as you said, it started June 17th and it ended, I guess,
Late August.
No, it ended.
No, it's in the winter time when it
Yeah,
ended.
it was winter time.
Okay, so
I think it was December, but
December.
You know how it is. It snows real deep in Boulder in August.
oh yeah.
Well, we were thinking that it was heading into the Shining territory with the ski thing going on.
It was the idea that basically, you know, when they were taking off in September to do the stand, essentially, the idea was that by the time they got back, it would be difficult and not to expect them back before the snow's cleared. It was only because they decided to push on and risk their lives to push on that they decided, which I think was kind of silly in a lot of ways, is that, you know, it's worth it to risk our lives to push on instead of staying here until spring because reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah, that to me was a little bit off, but I understand where they came from.
I feel like they should have been more like Indians and leave for warmer grounds once the winter becomes too cold.
It gave them an opportunity to go with that Stephen King trope of going into a blizzard, because that seems to be a trope. You've got it in The Shining, you've got it in Misery, you've got it in all, you know, all
go into that blizzard. It's just how you do it, man.
But the one interesting sidebar about production, I'm sure this was, I don't remember what the scene was in the book. I'm sure this was scripted this way on purpose, but it's amusing to think of it this way. The scene where Flag is in his penthouse and he's trying to interrogate Dana, and she looks around, she says something to the effect of, "You're not much one for chairs, are you?" And he's like, "Well, I think truth tellers sit on the ground, liars sit on chairs." And I'm like, that's a pretty fun little quippy moment, but it's also a very creative way to save yourself some budget by not having to get furniture for that scene. So I don't know.
Well, so now that we've talked a little bit about production, let us go into the music. Now, the music is something that's essential to the stand. The one that we all know is Blue Oyster Cult. That one stands out like a sore thumb. But there's definitely some other music. Some of it was created for it, like Larry's song that he supposedly, and his mother, of course, says, "You sound like a black man."
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to find who does the actual background music, because that was actually pretty good. W.G. Snuffy Walden apparently is the composer of the score, which I love that the composer in a series about a global pandemic has the name Snuffy. I love it.
Snuffy, the assassin.
Yes, the assassin, Snuffy. Mr. Snuffy. There you go, Mr. Snuffy. Yeah, we had, there's a one part where Harold is blasting some disco, and he gets really ticked at Nadine for, what did he call it? Messing with the man's disco or whatever. But he was playing Boogie Fever. We had a scene with Sharp Dressed Man, Eve of Destruction. That's an appropriate one. Yeah, there were some good songs in this soundtrack.
Well, the same guy who did the composing music also did The West Wing. composing music for The West Wing.
Good deal.
And for Under the Dome, which was a later Stephen King adaptation.
I saw the first couple episodes and never got any further. I'd like to see it one day.
What was it?
Under the Dome.
Oh yeah, great series. I saw the whole thing.
Actually, I think I started watching it with you, and somehow we got
it got weird towards the end, though. It
did.
Off the tracks.
And I guess some 15 episodes in Roswell, the TV show. Let's see, just going back. 98 episodes of Roseanne. Just looking backwards to see if how much he's actually done. Okay, a TV movie called The Chase. Oh, and The Outsiders TV show back in the day, because a lot of people don't remember that it was also a TV show in the 90s.
Now, with found music, this one, I mean, we've talked about found music in the past, and this series definitely has it. There's no doubt in my mind. And like I said, I mean, they did a full rendition of Baby Can You Dig Your Man. I mean, that's just worth it right there.
Right.
Let's see. Let's look at. I'm about to bring up the soundtrack here as soon as it stays in one place. So yeah. Baby Can You Dig Your Man, which was composed by Al Cooper and Stephen King, performed by Al Cooper for The Stand. Boogie Fever, performed by The Silvers. Of course, and then I'm surprised they got The Sharp Dressed Man.
Wait, Don't Fear the Reaper. Got to conclude that.
Blue
Oyster Cult.
Eve of Destruction, which was performed by Adam Stork. What a Friend We Have in Jesus. And Heartaches for a Guy and Don't Dream It's Over by Crowded House. So definitely an interesting mix.
Oh yeah, I remember the Crowded House one. That's when they were listening to a record.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Fran and
Harold
were listening to the record after her father had passed away.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the things that they had that showed Harold basically took charge at that moment and had helped them with a plan when Fran had no plan and she was in a panic mode. So in a way he served a positive purpose in that he was able to pull her together and help her get moving. It was just that really and truly Stu was a much stronger leader at the end of the day. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think now that we've talked about music a little bit, let's go into favorite scenes and our favorite characters. So I'm going to start with you, Jake.
Okay. Favorite scene. I'm gonna have to probably say Flag's meeting with Lloyd, where he introduces himself with sympathy for the devil. I just love that little thing. And that I feel like there's some other parts that come close, and I could probably think of a few, but that one I'll go ahead and pick that. As far as the favorite characters, Probably going to have to go with. I feel like Stu is kind of an obvious choice. Both Stu and Nick are kind of obvious choices because they're both like really good people who really do a lot for the story. They're easy to root for. But I'm kind of inclined to pick Glenn probably as my actual favorite if I had to pick one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that pretty much it then?
Yeah.
Alrighty, heading over to you, Tammy. Favorite scene or scenes and our favorite character or characters?
I actually had two favorite characters, Nick and Tom. Are my favorite characters. I think I really like both of them because, in a way, because of their obvious disabilities, they're the kind of like the underdogs, but yet they are so helpful in this whole thing. You know, I think in a way they kind of hold everything together, even with their, their obvious disabilities. You know, I don't think it would be the same without either one of them. You know. Favorite scenes. Wow. There's so many like cool things, you know. I like I like how crazy the trash guy gets. You know, from that when he blows up that first thing, and then that what was it, oil refinery or something?
Yeah.
And then later on when he's riding around at the missile place, and you know, he just is
the fact that he has clearance to that place, and there's no one there, and there's all these missile warheads there. It's like, if I were a bomber,
who's gonna be there and who's gonna stop him, David?
Right?
Okay, I'm going to add the look on his face where he's like a kid in a candy store when he goes into the nuclear silo.
Right.
That was also pretty great.
You know,
bombsy bomb, bombsy bomb.
Yeah, and then the makeup job they do on him. You know, he's
especially when you see him coming with that bomb and the degradation that they made to his face, that he is literally riding his body to his death, you know.
Right. That's why I like the scenes with him. So
anyways, is that pretty much it then?
Yeah, I can't say that I like the scenes in the whole movie, so you know.
You can say you like the movie as a whole if you really want to. But heading over to you, Brandon. Favorite scene or scenes and or favorite character?
Well, my favorite character in Stephen King lore is going to be Randall Flagg. He's just that kind of dude.
Awesome dude.
As far as like favorite scene, well, unfortunately, because I can't strongly put my mind on anything that's not in any of the other episodes I haven't rewatched. But I can say at least that beginning where the Blue Oyster Cult plays as they are all dead there. That's still, to me, no matter how many times I've watched it, it still sticks out to me as the most as the most memorable scene. So I think I'll just do that because, in truth, that'll stick with me regardless. Even after this rewatch is complete, it will be probably the scene sticking with me.
Okay. And oh god, I have quite a few favorite people. I would have to say Nick, Stu, Trash Can Man, and Flag. For some reason, I like all of them, but for different reasons, though. Trash Can Man, just because he's just pure nuts. But he has fun. You know, that role was fun. The fact that I mean, I've seen him in quite a few roles. I mean, he's even played Sherlock Holmes in a couple of in like one or two movies. So I know him as a character actor. He is very good at what he does, and I know it. I know he showed up in the remake of Dawn of the Dead as a character. But Trash Can Man, just something about him and his character. Even though I know he was kind of on the bad guy side, he was kind of a lovable bad guy. I don't know why. Maybe it was because he was already half baked to begin with, and they just fully cooked him by the end of the film. But any scene with Trash Can Man in it is a favorite for me. I do like. See, I'm a fan of the CGI in here. Yes, it was early, but I guarantee you the effects in here were better than the Langoliers. That being said, I mean, I've seen many different King adaptations of the miniseries. This one was a better one. So if I had to rank them, I'm not sure how I would entirely rank them entirely, but I enjoyed the betrayal. I enjoyed the look of the dead. You know, the special effects of the dead. I thought it was pretty darn gruesome before I had seen The Walking Dead. You know, which The Walking Dead has pretty much gone everywhere a zombie can go. So, and done everything a zombie can do. So, to me, there's a difference between plague movies and zombie movies. And this was a plague portrayal, not a zombie portrayal. Because zombie would say that these dead people were getting up and walking around and killing people.
Right.
This is a plague film. So, and I think a lot of people who when the pandemic was going on again were thinking of this miniseries. So, and the way the government acted is exactly, I think, how the government would treat it. They wouldn't exactly handle it well. But in any case, hopefully you ladies and gentlemen out there have enjoyed our portrayal and discussion on this miniseries. Hopefully you get a chance to watch this one before that crap remake that they did. Which even though that might be my opinion, you may actually like that adaptation. So I'm not going to entirely turn you off of that one entirely. I just didn't personally like it. even though I only watched like 2 episodes of it. It's only because I couldn't stand any more of it, but that's besides the point. Maybe it's because I'm a fanboy. Like, share, and subscribe in the bottom if you get a chance. Let us know your comments on discussion or opinions of our opinions, and hopefully we'll see you back here, because we're definitely gonna be having more in store for us. So why don't we tell the audience a little bit about ourselves and what we do? Tammy, why don't you start?
Well, I enjoy going on this site and another site with David and talking with everybody and about about movies and getting their opinions, and for the most part checking out things that I had never seen before. For the most part, that is. um, and with the summertime now, I enjoy taking my car out to the car shows.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm Kotobukijake. I am the occasional co-host of SeptumSin versus World YouTube channel, where we talk about physical media and such things. I know we'll be doing a Brandon's birthday discussion this week on Galaxy Express 999, so a much shorter prospect than this one, thankfully.
But in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. And I do keep very busy between work and going on hikes in 100-degree weather. Not something I entirely recommend, but that was certainly something yesterday. And going to concerts in 90-plus degree weather, which also is not highly recommended, although I do highly recommend the show I saw. The Mavericks and Dwight Yoakam, both very worth checking out if you have not done so. But generally speaking, not enough hours in the day for everything I want to get done. So it was a struggle to get the hours to watch this. And I am dog tired because I was up late doing it. But it's worth every now and then coming on here. Well, I mean, each week pretty much I come on here to chat with these fine folks about things of the movie and in some cases television group. I look forward to next week's discussion, which in addition to being much shorter will also be one that I very much enjoy, so that'll be fun. But it was nice to revisit this one. Hopefully one day I'll have a chance to revisit the book. Who knows when that'll happen, but it'd be nice.
Well, I thank you for putting the time into and the effort.
Right. Yeah, and one day, I mean, I do eventually want to get through most of King's stuff. I've read a lot of them at this point, but there's so many that I still need to hit. I still have not read The Body or The Shawshank Redemption or Dolores Claiborne or The Needful Things, Gerald's Game. There's so many I haven't even.
And a billion others.
Gerald's Game, I got through.
To hell with Gerald's Game. I hated that one.
Wow. I was just thinking of the ones that came to mind because he's written so many. It's hard to keep track of them all.
But Mike Flanagan did a great job at bringing it to the small screen.
I couldn't watch it. The book bothered me so much I could not watch the adaptation.
At any rate, that's life goals and all that.
Oh God! Heading over to you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
SeptumSin versus the World. What Jake said. Next week, Dogma.
And my name is David Strege. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us for this fantastic journey we've been having. I'm sure all of us are tired. I'm sure we can't even stand anymore. But I had a blast. Hopefully you guys did too. And I know we did finally finish to putting together a release. We'll have more for that in store for you because I still have to get a master copy my own darn self, and I think we still have to release it. Yeah,
it's on the way to you, Dave. It's in the mail.
Oh shit! I didn't even know. So, but in any case, I guess we will see you next week with Dogma. So everyone say good night.
Good night, everyone. And don't
Good night.
fear the reaper.
We can be like they are. Come on, baby. We'll be able to fly. All right.
Inside Movies Galore just makes you just want more. We've had all in the world of media to explore. Horror, anime, or Curious George. Our love of new things was our reward. It is the best night of our week.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.